Hello guys, welcome to Prime F Action. Today we have an incredible story for you. What if Naruto was secret grandson of Dracula who arrived at Hotel Transylvania? If you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. The Boy at the Door. The Hokage vault smelled like dust and old paper, and Naruto had been sneezing in it for 20 minutes. "You could have just sent me a letter," he said, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "A scroll, a bird. Anything that isn't 3 flights of stairs down into the murder basement. It's the archive." Kakashi didn't look up. He was crouched in front of a wall of drawers, one gloved hand walking through tags. "Nobody's been murdered here in at least 60 years. That's not the flex you think it is." "Found it." Kakashi pulled a flat black box out of the wall and set it on a reading table with the kind of care people usually saved for babies and explosive tags. "This was in your mother's personal effects. It's been down here since the night she died. Nobody could open it, so nobody tried very hard." Naruto stopped sneezing. He came over slowly, which was not a way he usually did anything. The box was plain. No crest, no sealwork he recognized, just a lid with a hairline crack down the middle and a rusty little clasp shaped like a bat. "That's a weird clasp. I noticed." He flicked it with his thumbnail. The box opened like it had been waiting to. Inside, on a bed of red silk gone brown at the edges, sat a locket. Silver, heavy, the size of a plum, with a stylized crest hammered into the face, a shield, a stag, and 3 ugly little towers. Under it, folded into a square and tied with a strand of red hair, was a scroll. Naruto picked up the locket first. It was warm. "That should be freezing," Kakashi said mildly. "It's been in a stone room for 19 years. "Yeah." Naruto turned it over in his palm. "Yeah, it should," the clasp gave. Inside was a portrait, painted so small it must have taken somebody a month and a magnifying lens. A woman with black hair and a heart-shaped face and a smile that was half secret. She wasn't Kushina. But looking at her was like looking at a house Naruto had lived in once, in a dream, and forgotten the address of. He couldn't breathe right for a second. The scroll had one line of writing on the outside, in his mother's hard, slanted, angry handwriting. He knew that handwriting from her name on old mission rosters. He'd traced it with his finger before, "For my father. If he ever comes looking." Naruto read it 4 times. "My dad's parents were farmers," he said. "That's what the records say. Namikaze from the rice country. Those are your father's parents." Kakashi finally looked at him, both eyes, no book, no slouch. "Naruto." Nobody ever knew where Kushina came from. Not really. The Uzumaki took her in when she was 6 years old. She showed up at the gates of Uzushio in a boat with no oars and no crew, and she had that locket around her neck, and she didn't speak a word of any language anyone knew for 2 months. "It's in the file. It's been in the file the whole time." "Then why didn't anybody?" "Because she was a Jinchuriki, and then she was a wife, and then she was dead, and the village had other problems." Kakashi's voice went flat in the way it did when he was ashamed of something that wasn't only his. "It's not a good reason. It's the reason." Naruto stood in the murder basement holding a warm locket and a letter addressed to a grandfather he'd never heard of. Somewhere very far back behind his ribs, something that had been asleep his entire life rolled over and opened one eye. "Oh," said Kurama in a tone Naruto had never once heard from him. "Oh, that's what that is." "What?" "Nothing. Sit down, kid, or don't. You never do, Kurama." The fox made a sound like a mountain settling. 19 years I've been in your gut, and 19 years there's been a flavor in your blood I couldn't place. Not Uzumaki, not human. Something older and a lot ruder." A pause. "Open the scroll," he tried. He really did. The strand of red hair wouldn't burn, wouldn't cut, and when he pushed chakra at the knot, the whole scroll pulsed once, deep crimson, and pushed back hard enough to knock the reading table 2 feet across the floor. "Blood seal," Kakashi said from where he'd landed against a drawer. "2 key, yours and somebody else's. Whose? Take a guess." The locket was still warm. When Naruto held it up, the light coming through the vault's one high window bent around it, and the crest on the face turned very slightly, like a compass needle, until the stag pointed east and a little bit down. Not toward any country on any map he'd ever memorized for the academy. Naruto grinned. It was a bad grin, the one Sakura called the "I'm about to make everything so much worse" grin. "Kakashi-sensei, no, I'm going. I know. I said no, so the record shows I said no." Kakashi got up and dusted himself off. "Take a coat. And Naruto, if there's family at the other end of that, don't lead with a punch." "When have I ever led with a punch?" Kakashi looked at him. "Okay, but those were special circumstances every single time." The crossing took 9 days and ended in a rainstorm. It wasn't a jutsu exactly. The locket did most of it. He'd walked east until the road stopped matching any map, then further east until the trees changed species mid-forest, oak becoming something black-barked and unhappy, and then he'd come to a place in a valley where the air had a seam in it. You could see it if you stopped looking directly at it. Sage mode made it obvious. A scar in the world's chakra, stitched shut with something that wasn't chakra at all, thinner, redder, older, humming like a struck bell. The locket had gotten hot enough to blister a normal hand. Naruto had pressed it into the seam and the seam had opened, and something on the other side had breathed out at him, cold air smelling of pine, wood smoke, and, distantly, cinnamon. Now he stood in ankle-deep mud on a mountain road at midnight, soaked to the bone, staring up at the ugliest, most beautiful building he had ever seen in his life. It had too many towers. That was the first thing. Somebody had built a castle and then, over centuries, kept getting excited and adding to it. Spires stuck on spires, wings folded over wings, a whole crooked wedding cake of black stone lit from within by 10,000 windows, every single one of them glowing warm gold. Bats poured out of the highest tower in a ribbon and rearranged themselves into what was unmistakably a heart shape, held it for 3 seconds, and then scattered, laughing. Actually laughing. He could hear them from here. Over the drawbridge, in letters made of what appeared to be living green fire, was a sign. Hotel Transylvania, human-free since 1898. Mostly. "I'm going to enjoy this," said Kurama. Naruto walked up to the gate. 2 gargoyles the size of horses unfolded off the pillars, joints grinding, eyes lighting up red. "Halt," said the left one. "State your name and species." "Naruto Uzumaki," he thought about it. "Ninja." "That is not a species. It's kind of a species. It is an occupation." The right gargoyle leaned down, sniffed him, and recoiled so hard it cracked its own pedestal. "He smells like a human. I get that a lot. He smells like a human and also like something that eats humans and also like a fox and also like pork broth." "Okay, that last one's fair. I had lunch." The gargoyles looked at each other. Then, in perfect unison, they turned their heads toward the hotel and shrieked at a pitch that took the rain sideways. Naruto sighed, put his hands in his pockets, and walked through the gate while they were still screaming. The lobby was the size of 3 training fields, and it stopped dead when he came through the doors. He got an impression of chandeliers made of candles and bone, of a checkerboard floor, of a staircase you could have marched an army down, and of about 200 creatures, actual, honest, storybook creatures, a werewolf family sprawled over 4 couches, a suit of armor reading a newspaper, 3 witches sharing one enormous cocktail, a blob of green gelatin wearing a fez, all turning to look at the dripping wet blonde kid in orange standing on the welcome mat. A zombie in a bellhop uniform shuffled up, arms out, moaning. "Hey," said Naruto, "do you guys have towels?" The zombie's jaw came off. Sorry, that's on me." Naruto caught it before it hit the floor and handed it back. "There you go, good as new." Is there a front desk?" There was a front desk. There was also behind it a man in a suit who was 7 feet of shrunken green skin and eyes like boiled eggs, and who had just dropped an entire ledger into a fireplace. Naruto padded across the checkerboard floor, leaving a trail of mud, entirely aware that 200 pairs of eyes were tracking him and not caring even slightly. He'd walked into worse rooms. He'd walked into a war. He put both hands on the desk. "Hi. I'm looking for a guy named Dracula." The chandelier candles went out, all of them, every single one at once like a held breath. "Was that me?" Naruto asked the dark. "Dude," said a voice from somewhere near his elbow. "Dude." The lights came back. A young man in a plaid shirt and cargo shorts had appeared beside him, grinning like Christmas, red hair sticking out in 9 directions, holding a phone up. Okay, so first of all, welcome. Second of all, are you okay? Third of all, you cannot just say that name in here. It's like yelling audit at a tax office. I'm Johnny. I do activities. Naruto. Naruto. Great name, super cool, very anime. Johnny stopped. His grin dimmed by about 10%. Hey, weird question, don't take this the wrong way. Are you a human? I don't actually know anymore, Naruto said honestly. Oh, buddy. Johnny put a hand on his shoulder with enormous sympathy. I have been there. Something dropped out of the ceiling. It landed between them in a swirl of black smoke that resolved into a young woman, pale as paper, black hair in a severe bob, huge blue eyes, wearing striped tights and an expression that had gone from delighted to armed in the space of 1 second. She put a hand flat on Johnny's chest and moved him behind her without looking. Hi, she said brightly. Who are you and what's in your pockets? Kunai mostly, a frog wallet, this. Naruto pulled out the locket and let it swing. The woman's face did something complicated and terrible. Mavis, Johnny said carefully. Mavis, honey, your eyes are doing the thing. She didn't answer. She reached out, stopped an inch from the silver, and Naruto watched the color of her, which had been fight, turn all the way over into something small and 8 years old. Where did you get that? She said. It was my mom's. That's not possible. Yeah, that's what I keep hearing. The doors at the top of the grand staircase blew open. Everything else in the room got quieter, but it wasn't the sound. It was the temperature. It went down 8 degrees in a heartbeat, and the fires guttered, and every candle flame leaned away from the stairs like grass in a wind, and a shadow came down the steps that arrived several seconds before the man casting it. He was tall and narrow and dressed in black with a red-lined cape, and he had a widow's peak you could have opened letters with, and his eyes were the color of a stoplight. Ah, said Kurama with enormous satisfaction. There it is. Naruto's blood moved. That was the only way he could describe it then or later. Not fear, he'd have recognized fear. He was on speaking terms with it. This was recognition, and it happened somewhere underneath thought in the plumbing. Every drop of blood in his body turned toward the man on the stairs the way a field of sunflowers turns at dawn, and his teeth ached. And for 1/2 second the smell of the room went from wood smoke and cinnamon to 200 separate heartbeats, each one distinct, each one delicious. He shut it down. Sage chakra flooded up through his feet, cold and clear as well water, and the world went back to normal, mostly. Dracula stopped 6 steps from the bottom, which put his eyes exactly level with Naruto's. Who, he said, are you? Naruto Uzumaki. That is a name. It is not an answer. The vampire came down another step. The lobby had emptied around them without anyone appearing to move. The werewolf cubs had been scooped up. The witches had taken their cocktail behind a pillar. You walk into my hotel, which has wards, which has had wards since before your grandparents were a rumor, smelling like sunlight and blood, and something with too many tails. You say my name out loud in my own lobby, and you have in your hand a piece of jewelry that I made with my own 2 hands in 1897 and buried in the ground in 1899. Then you're the guy I'm here for. Naruto held up the locket, because I need your blood. Somewhere in the back of the room, the gelatinous blob fainted. Drac's face did not change. His hand did. It came up in a gesture too fast to follow, and the locket ripped out of Naruto's fingers, flew across 10 feet of air and slapped into the vampire's palm. Hey, Drac opened it. Whatever he'd been braced for, it wasn't what he saw. Naruto watched 500 years of practice, layered, professional composure come off the man's face like a sheet pulled off furniture. Underneath was just some guy holding a picture of his dead wife in a room full of people who worked for him. Where? Drac said. His voice had lost all its edges. Where did you get this? My mother's things. She died the night I was born. Naruto kept his own voice level because one of them had to. Her name was Kushina. The locket hit the floor. It was a small sound. In that lobby it might as well have been a bell. Say it again, said Dracula. Kushina Uzumaki, red hair, bad temper, punched a guy through a wall at her own wedding, allegedly. Naruto's throat had gone tight and he was mad about it. There's a scroll. She sealed it with blood. It's got 2 keys and one of them's me, and I'm guessing. He didn't finish because Dracula crossed the room, not walked. There was no walk in it. One instant he was on the stairs, and the next he had both hands fisted in the front of Naruto's jacket, and his face was 2 inches away, and his eyes had gone from stoplight red to something with no white in it at all, and his fangs were fully out, and the noise coming out of him was not a word in any language. Behind him, Mavis screamed, "Dad!" Naruto did not move. He looked into the face of a thing that had eaten cities and said, very calmly, "You're gonna want to let go of me. I've had a long walk." "You lie," Drax shook him. "She is dead. She has been dead for 126 years. She died with her mother in the fire in the house. I looked for her. I looked for 30 years. "Then you're bad at looking." The temperature dropped again. Frost bloomed across the checkerboard tiles in a ring 6 feet wide. 100 bats detached from the ceiling and swirled into a screaming column behind the vampire's shoulders, and the whole hotel groaned, actually groaned, stone on stone, like the building itself was clenching a fist. "Dad, stop it. You come into my house," Drac hissed, "with her face in your hand, and you use my daughter's memory as a key. Who sent you? The Conclave, Crowleys. Do you know what I am, boy? Do you have any idea what I—" "Old man," said Naruto. And he put one finger against Dracula's chest and pushed. It was a very gentle push. He'd calibrated it carefully, the way he'd learned to calibrate everything after Sasuke, after the war, after breaking things he hadn't meant to break. He used maybe 1/10 of what he'd have used to open a stuck door. Dracula went backward 30 feet, took out a marble pillar, and put a Dracula-shaped hole in the wall of the coat check. The bats stopped screaming. 200 monsters stopped breathing. Johnny said, "Oh no," in a very tiny voice. Naruto rolled his shoulders and walked over to the hole in the wall and stuck his hand into it. "Come on. I'm not here to fight you. I'm here because I've been an orphan for 19 years, and last week I found out I might not have to be, and I walked across 2 worlds to knock on your door, and if you want to throw me out you can try, but you should know I'm real hard to throw." There was a long silence from inside the coat check. Then a hand came out and took his, and Naruto pulled Dracula out of the wall. The vampire stood there with plaster in his hair, staring at him. There was blood at the corner of his mouth, his own. His eyes had gone back to red, and they were doing something worse than rage now. They were doing arithmetic. "You pushed me," he said. "Sorry, nobody pushes me. Abraham Van Helsing shot me with a cannon in 1912 and I caught it. Sorry." "Stop apologizing, it's making it worse." Drac wiped his mouth, looked at his own blood, and then looked at Naruto's face, really looked, the way you look at a map. "Your eyes are blue." "Yeah, hers were blue, Martha's were blue, mine are." He stopped. Something behind his sternum audibly cracked. The girl, the child. She had red hair, not black. Red like her grandmother's. The whole family said it skipped. They said it was a bad omen. We laughed about it. "Dad?" Mavis was suddenly there, both hands on her father's arm. She was looking at Naruto like she wanted to bite him and hug him, and neither. "Dad, what girl?" Dracula closed his eyes. "Not here," he said. The room they ended up in was somewhere in the 4th tower, up a staircase that changed length depending on how you felt about it. It had a fire, 3 chairs, a window with the storm hammering on it, and a portrait over the mantel of a black-haired woman in a red dress who was, without question, the woman in the locket. Naruto stood in front of it with his hands in his pockets for a long time. "Martha," Drax said from the doorway, "your grandmother. She looks like she's about to do something dumb." She was always about to do something dumb. The vampire's laugh came out broken in the middle. That was the entire personality. She used to sneak into human villages to watch weddings. She thought the hats were funny. Mavis sat down hard on the arm of a chair. Johnny hovered behind her with his hands on her shoulders, for once completely silent. Somewhere on the other side of the door, a small voice was saying, "But I want to see," and a woman with a southern accent was saying, "Absolutely not, sugar, get down from there." "Talk," said Mavis. "Dad, right now, what girl?" Dracula went to the window and put his hand flat on the glass. "Before you," he said, "there was another. You never." "I never." He didn't turn around. "When your mother and I married, the Conclave would not recognize it. Martha she was a Caresti, an old family, but not old enough. Not for them. So we did it anyway, and we lived in a house on the Arges with a red roof, and we had a daughter. And she was loud, and she bit everyone, and she had red hair and she could stand in the dawn. He said it like it was a confession. Mavis made a small noise. She could what? 10 minutes, 20. She would sit on the roof and watch the sun come over the water and laugh at me hiding under a blanket in the door. His hand curled on the glass. It is a thing that happens sometimes, very rarely. The old blood folds over and comes out the other side and you get a daughter who does not burn. The conclave has a word for it. Sulmacula, the sun stain. It is not a compliment, it means impure. It means the line has been diluted by something and produced a thing that is not a proper vampire. That's insane, said Johnny. Yes, thank you, I said this, loudly for 6 years. Drax spun around and for a second there was heat in him again. And in that 6th year, someone put a map in the hands of a village that had lost 2 children to wolves and told them the wolves lived in the house with the red roof. The fire popped. They came at 3 in the afternoon, Drax said, which was clever. I was asleep. Martha put Kushina in the root cellar and went upstairs to hold the door. Nobody said anything. I woke up in a burning house holding my wife's ashes, Dracula said, and by the time I got to the cellar the floor was gone, and the river ran under that house, and there was nothing down there but water and smoke. I searched the Arges for 6 years. I searched the Danube for 11. I searched the Black Sea coast for as long as there was a coast to search. He looked at Naruto. The river went to the sea. She was 6 years old and she could not swim. She could swim, Naruto said. She swam like a fish. She used to race the Uzumaki boys and beat them so bad they cried. That's in the records. They wrote it down because it kept happening. He had to stop. Dracula sat down. It was less a decision than a structural failure. Tell me, he said. So Naruto told him. He told it badly because he'd never told it before, not all in one piece. About a girl who washed up in a boat with no oars and got taken in by a clan of red-haired sealing masters on an island nobody could find. About how she'd been a loudmouth and a bully fighter, and how they'd called her Tomato, and how she'd broken a boy's nose for it, and then married him 9 years later. About the fox, he skipped a lot of the fox. About how she'd been the strongest woman in the village, and had held a chain of pure will around a mountain-sized monster for 4 hours while dying, and had spent the last 30 seconds of her life apologizing to a baby for not being able to teach him about vegetables. He told him about her last words, which he'd heard once inside his own head in a place made of water. When he was finished, Dracula had not moved at all in 11 minutes. She was happy, the vampire said. It was not really a question. She was so happy it made people mad, said Naruto. Dracula put his face in his hands. Mavis crossed the room and knelt down in front of her father and put her arms around him, and Johnny, after one agonized second, sat on the floor and leaned against Drax's leg like a dog, which was somehow exactly right. Naruto stayed where he was in front of the portrait, feeling like a stranger at a funeral. He'd wanted this. He'd walked 9 days for it. Now that he was in the room, he had absolutely no idea where to put his hands. Then a black-haired blur detached from the doorway, crossed the carpet, and hit him in the stomach. "Are you my cousin?" Naruto looked down. A kid, maybe 6, with an explosion of red curls and a vampire cape 3 sizes too big and enormous serious eyes. "Dennis, honey." "I heard everything," Dennis said, muffled, arms locked around Naruto's middle. "I was on the ceiling." "Are you my cousin?" Naruto's hand landed on the kid's head like it belonged there. "Yeah," he said. "Guess I am." They fed him, because it turned out that was the entire hotel's response to any emotional event. The kitchen was staffed by 6 identical cooks who might have been ogres and definitely were siblings. And within 20 minutes, Naruto had a table in the empty ballroom, 3 bowls of goulash, a plate of something called kuatas kalaks, and an audience. Frankenstein was the big one, obviously, green and stitched, and currently crying into a napkin over a story he'd only heard the back half of. Wayne the werewolf had 400 children and the 1,000-yard stare that came with them. Griffin was an empty pair of glasses. Murray was a mummy who had already twice asked Naruto to confirm whether he was single. "So let me get this straight," Griffin's glasses tilted. "You're a ninja, shinobi, yeah, from a hidden village, Hidden Leaf. And your mom was a vampire, half I guess turns out." Naruto had his mouth full. Nobody told her either. She thought she was from a fishing town. And you're a quarter vampire and you can go outside in the sun. I've literally never thought about it. Sun's just sun. Every monster at the table shuddered. Kid, said Murray. I gotta tell you, you just said sun's just sun in a building where we have a committee about the curtains. Do the thing again, said Frank, wiping his eyes. Do the clone thing. Naruto put down his spoon, made one hand sign, and 11 of him appeared around the table. The reaction was worth the chakra. Wayne fell off his chair. 2 of the ogre cooks came running out to see what the screaming was, saw 12 Narutos, and started screaming as well. Dennis went completely rigid with joy and then began, at a dead sprint, to climb one of the clones like a tree. Okay, that's insane, that's actual duplication. Griffin's glasses were right up in a clone's face. You're solid. You've got a pulse. They pop if you hit them. Dennis stopped climbing. Can I hit one? Absolutely. Dennis. The kid punched a clone in the leg. It burst into smoke. Dennis screamed with a joy so pure it made the chandelier ring, and the entire ballroom lost its mind. Across the table, Mavis watched her son and her cousin, nephew, whatever the word was, she'd figure the word out later, and did not smile. She was, Naruto noticed, still sitting between Dennis and the door. He let the clones go and sat back down. You want to ask me something? A lot of somethings. Go for it. Mavis leaned forward on her elbows. 19 years, my dad has been the most careful person on earth. He built a whole hotel so nobody's kid would ever get hurt again, and I found out why about 10 minutes ago, and I'm going to be angry about that for a while. Her voice was perfectly pleasant. And now, 1 week after the conclave sends us a letter about our irregular guest population. A boy shows up at the door with a locket only 2 people ever knew about, and a story that makes my dad cry. You think I'm a plant? I think it would be really, really convenient. Her eyes went hard, so prove it. The ballroom went quiet. Everybody was suddenly very interested in the ceiling. Naruto thought about it. Then he pushed his sleeve up and held his forearm over the table, palm up. Bite me. Johnny inhaled a piece of pastry. You what? Blood doesn't lie, right? That's a thing here, he shrugged. You're a vampire. I've got a face and a story. You want the part that can't be faked, so bite me and find out. Mavis stared at him. That is a deeply weird offer. Yeah, well, where I'm from we usually just fight about it, so this is me growing as a person. She looked at her father. Dracula, who had said nothing since the tower, gave a single small nod. Mavis took Naruto's wrist. Her hands were cold. She bared her fangs, hesitated 1 heartbeat, and bit down. It hurt about as much as a stapler. Then she went rigid. Her eyes flew open and the room filled with the sound of every window in the ballroom cracking at once, 40 tall panes going white with frost from the inside. And Mavis Dracula was suddenly 6 inches off the floor, hair floating. Both hands locked around Naruto's arm, and she made a sound that no one in that hotel had ever heard her make. She let go. She dropped. She stumbled back into Johnny's arms and put her hand over her mouth, and there were tears standing in her eyes and blood on her chin. Mavis. She's in there, Mavis said. Dracula stood up. I have a sister. Mavis was laughing and it was coming out wrong, wet and cracked. Dad, I have a sister. I can taste her. She's all over him. She's like you. She's exactly like you. She's so loud. And that was how Naruto Uzumaki got hugged by a vampire hard enough to bruise a rib, in a ballroom full of screaming monsters, at 2:14 in the morning. Which was, of course, when the conclave arrived. The doors didn't open. They unmade themselves, both leaves of a 30-foot double door coming apart into ash from the center outward, so that the ash blew inward across the ballroom floor in a wave, and the storm came in behind it. 6 figures walked through the gap. They wore gray. That was the thing Naruto noticed first, and it told him more than any crest would have. Not black, not red, no drama, just flat, wet slate gray, coats to the ankle, hoods down, faces bare. Professionals. Each one carried a halberd with a head that gleamed too bright to be steel, and each one had a length of fine chain wrapped from wrist to elbow, and the chains were moving on their own. Every monster in the ballroom got very small and very quiet. Frank actually put his hands up. The one in front was a woman about Naruto's age. She was tall and black-haired, and her skin had a warmth in it that none of the others did, and she carried herself with the specific rigid perfection of someone who has been told her whole life that she is one mistake away from being a disappointment. She had a scroll in her left hand and she read from it without looking at it, which meant she'd memorized it, which meant she'd been rehearsing. By the authority of the Blood Conclave, seated at Volterra in the 9th month of the 411th session, she said, I bear a writ of reclamation against the estate and person of Vlad Tepes, styled Dracula, of the House of the Dragon. Nadia, Drac's voice could have frozen the river outside. Does your grandfather know he sent a child to do this? My grandfather sent his heir. Her chin came up half an inch. The writ names one subject. An unregistered individual of contested blood, presently within these walls, believed to be Sulmacula, and therefore conclave property pending assay. The word landed in the room like a dropped plate. Property, said Mavis, it's the legal term. Get out of my house. Ma'am, I'd love to. Nadia Crowley's did not move. I have a writ. You have a hotel full of guests with paperwork problems. There's a version of tonight where I take one person and file one report, and there's a version where the conclave sends the Nachtwash with a closure order, and every soul in this building spends the next 50 years being assessed. Her eyes flicked once to Dennis, and Naruto watched something flinch behind her face. You know exactly how that goes. Dracula's shadow was spreading across the floor. It had already reached the far wall. He was going to do something enormous and expensive, and Naruto could feel the whole night about to tip over into a shape nobody could put back. So he walked out in front of everybody and said, Hi, I'm the property. Nadia turned to him. Naruto Uzumaki. He gave her a little wave. You're Nadia, cool. Look, real quick, before this gets dumb, I'm gonna say no. So can we do the part where you find that out fast instead of slow? Sir, I'd advise. Also, you've got a heartbeat. The ballroom's temperature changed, not from Drac this time. Nadia Crowley's went absolutely still. Sage mode's kind of cheating, Naruto said, not unkindly. I can hear everything with a pulse in a 2-mile radius. Yours is going like a rabbit and it's been going since you walked in, and it's the only one on your whole team. He tilted his head. Nobody knows, huh? Her hand tightened on the halberd until the wood creaked. Take him, she said. They were fast. He'd give them that genuinely, honestly fast, faster than most Chunin, and the chains came off their arms and split, 30 separate lines of silver hissing through the air in a net that would have wrapped a bear. Naruto was not there. He was behind the two on the left, and he'd already tapped each of them on the base of the skull, and they folded like laundry. The third turned and swung the halberd in a beautiful diagonal that would have taken his head off if his head had still been attached to a body in that location. Instead, the blade passed through a shadow clone, and the clone caught the shaft on the way past and gave it a friendly little tug, and the enforcer went face first into the buffet table. The fourth and fifth got smart. They stopped trying to hit him and threw their chains at the hostages, at Frank, at Dennis, at the nearest warm bodies, which was, Naruto had to admit, exactly what he'd have done. 4 clones appeared in the air along the chain's path and caught them barehanded. Silver burned. He felt it through the shared sense, a bright chemical sizzle across 4 sets of palms, and he filed that away as interesting and possibly a problem later, and the clones didn't let go. They hauled. Both enforcers came off their feet, sailed across the ballroom, and got stacked neatly on top of their unconscious friends. 2 seconds. Maybe 2.5. Nadia hadn't moved. She was staring at the pile of the 6 best blood hunters her house employed. I'm not gonna hurt you, Naruto said. You are aware, she said, that this is worse. Yeah, I know. He scratched the back of his head. Sorry, it always is. She came at him anyway. And she was good. Better than the others by a wide margin. The halberd moved like it weighed nothing, high and low, and a reverse that came up under his guard from a stance she'd hidden inside a feint. And she did not telegraph, not once, and she didn't waste a single motion on rage. Somebody had trained her since she could walk. Somebody had trained her hard, because being what she was meant, she'd never be allowed to be merely good. Naruto let her have 11 seconds because she'd earned them, and because he wanted to see the whole shape of her. On the 12th, he caught the halberd's half between 2 fingers. She pulled. It didn't move. She pulled with everything she had, boots skidding on the parquet, and it did not move a millimeter, and he watched her arrive at the understanding all at once, the way everyone did. "Your left elbow drops when you go low," he said. "Every time you're compensating for a shoulder thing, old injury." Nadia let go of the halberd and stepped back, breathing hard, and reached for the knife at her belt. "Also, you've been holding back," Naruto added. She froze. "You've got about twice the speed you're using. It's in how you set your feet." He turned the halberd around, reversed it, and handed it to her hilt first. "That's the human half, right? Runs hotter, faster in the daylight hours, and if you ever use it in front of your own people, they'll know." The knife came halfway out of its sheath and stopped. The whole ballroom was watching. 200 monsters, a vampire lord, and 5 unconscious enforcers. "You don't know anything about me," Nadia said. Her voice had gone very thin. "Nope," Naruto grinned at her. "But I know that hotel food's amazing and it's almost 3 in the morning and my grandpa just found out he's got a grandkid, so honestly, nobody in this room is having a normal night." He jerked a thumb at the buffet. "You hungry? There's goulash." Nadia Crowley stared at him. "That is not," she said, "how a writ of reclamation works." "Then it's a bad writ. It's you can't just." She actually stamped her foot and immediately looked furious with herself for it. "There is a process. There's an assay and a hearing, and my grandfather is going to stand in front of the full conclave in 6 days and read your name into the record, and when I go back with nothing he is going to." She stopped. The silence stretched. "He's gonna what?" said Naruto. "Nothing." She sheathed the knife. "Nothing, I'll take my people." "Nadia," Dracula's voice quiet from the head of the room. "Your father was a decent man. He'd be sick to see you carrying gray." "My father," said Nadia Crowley's without turning around, "is why I carry it." She got her enforcers up. 2 of them could walk. The rest went over shoulders, and at the ruined doorway she stopped and looked back at Naruto with an expression he couldn't read at all. 6 days, she said. "He'll come himself. He'll bring the conclave to your ballroom because he thinks it will humiliate your father, and he's right." Her jaw worked. "Don't be here. I'll be here." "I know," she said. "That's the problem." And then the gray coats were gone into the rain, and the doors were still ash on the floor, and Frankenstein said, into the silence, "So are we all gonna talk about how the kid caught Silver?" The rain quit an hour before dawn. Naruto sat on the roof of the 4th tower with his legs over the edge, watching the sky over the mountains go from black to bruise, and he wasn't alone for long. Dracula came up as a bat, resolved into a man, and sat down beside him with his cape pooled behind him like spilled ink. He was holding the locket, he'd polished it. "You are going to burn," he said. "Nah." Everyone says nah. They watched the light come. It came up gold over the eastern ridge and rolled down the valley and hit the tower, and Naruto put his face in it and closed his eyes, and Dracula flinched back into the shadow of the chimney with one arm up. And then, slowly, watched. His grandson sat in the sunrise with his ankles swinging over 400 feet of nothing. Steam came off his damp jacket. He looked ordinary and impossible and about 6 years old. "She used to do that," Drac said. "Yeah. On the roof, exactly that, right down to the..." He made a helpless gesture at the swinging feet. "It made me insane," Naruto laughed. "I have a letter I cannot open," Dracula said, "and a granddaughter I never buried. And in 6 days, Myrick Crowley's is going to walk into my ballroom and try to take you apart in front of my staff." He turned the locket over in his fingers. "You should go home. You don't want me to. I want you to be alive, which historically has not been compatible with people I want." The vampire's voice cracked just slightly on the last word. "Do you understand what I am asking?" Naruto opened his eyes. Down in the courtyard, 400 feet below, a zombie was sweeping up ash from the doors, very slowly, 1 square foot at a time. "My whole life," he said, "everybody in my village looked at me like I was a thing that was going to go off. And I decided when I was like 9 that I was gonna make every single one of them say my name with respect or die trying." He shrugged. "Took a while. But nobody ever protected me by sending me away, old man. They protected me by getting out of my way." Dracula was quiet a long moment. "Nobody has ever called me old man twice," he said. "Get used to it. I am 549. Old man. Something happened to Dracula's face that hadn't happened in a while. It took him a second to identify it as a smile. 6 days, he said. Then we will see. Yeah, Naruto squinted at the ridgeline. Hey, question. Does the hotel own any, like, flying machines, little ones? About yay big, 4 spinny things on top, sort of a. He held up his hands. Buzzy. Drac's smile went away. No, he said. Cool, then that's not yours. He held up his other hand. Sitting in his palm was a mangled tangle of black plastic and carbon fiber. 4 rotor arms snapped off flush. 1 lens cracked. He'd taken it out of a pine tree at the edge of the grounds 20 minutes ago, after Sage Mode had picked up something 400 meters out that had a battery instead of a heartbeat and had been sitting perfectly still, aimed at the ballroom windows for the entire fight. Dracula took it, turned it over. On the underside, laser-etched into the casing beside a serial number, was a small clean logo, a circle, and inside it a stylized open hand cupping a sleeping bat. Under it 3 words, sanctuary, safety, silence. That's not conclave, said Naruto. The gray guys don't have batteries. No, Dracula's thumb moved slowly over the etched hand. Behind him the sun climbed. No, they do not. Chapter 2. Blood Court. The thing about 6 days was that nobody could agree on what to do with them. Drac wanted to spend them on paperwork. He'd hauled out 4 centuries of conclave precedent, a ledger the size of a coffin lid, and a pair of reading glasses nobody in the hotel had ever seen before. And he sat in the library for 2 straight nights muttering about the Caresti exception and something called sanguis probatio until Frank took the glasses away. Mavis wanted to spend them building a bunker. Johnny wanted to spend them making a hype video. Naruto spent them teaching Dennis to throw kunai. Elbow up, he said, on the 3rd afternoon, in a courtyard that had once been a garden and was now mostly holes. You're throwing like you're mad at it. I am mad at it. Fair, but the kunai doesn't care. He tapped the kid's wrist, adjusted 2 fingers, stepped back. Try again, don't aim. Just let go when it feels stupid. Dennis let go when it felt stupid. The kunai went in the tree with a sound like a knuckle cracking, 2 inches off the knot he'd been aiming at, and the boy's shriek scattered every bird in the valley. Mom. Mom, did you see? I saw it, honey. Mavis called from the balcony in the voice of a woman who had seen it and who had also spent the last 3 days quietly counting exits. That's amazing. That's a knife, though. That's a real knife, and we're going to have a conversation about that. He's fine, Naruto called up. I'm not worried about him. She dropped off the balcony and landed in the grass, arms folded, and Naruto knew that particular posture from Sakura and knew he was about to get told something. Walk with me, said Mavis. They went out past the hedge maze, where the topiary was slowly and grumpily rearranging itself into a welcome banner nobody had asked it for. Dennis stayed behind with 2 clones and a tree that was having the worst week of its life. He's going to want to come, Mavis said. To the trial, he's going to ask and he's going to be very cute about it. So say no. Have you met him? She kicked a pinecone into the ravine. That's not why I dragged you out here. Naruto, what happens when you lose? I don't. Everybody says that. Yeah, and then some of us keep not losing and everybody gets weird about it. He put his hands behind his head. Okay, seriously. Ask me the real question. Mavis walked in silence for a bit. My dad's been happy for 3 days, she said. Happy. He hummed at breakfast. He hasn't hummed since, I want to say never. And I keep waiting to feel great about that, and instead I keep thinking about how he's going to look if the conclave takes you, and I don't think he survives it. She stopped walking. That's the real question, what happens to him? Nothing's taking me. You don't know, Mavis. He said it gently. There was a guy, 2 years ago. He had an army of 100,000 people and a god in his chest and a moon-sized plan, and he could see the future well enough to dodge things before I threw them. He shrugged. He's under a rock now, she stared at him. That's insane. That's Tuesday. You realize that's insane. I've been told. He grinned at her and then let the grin go because she deserved better than the grin. Look, here's the part I actually mean. I'm not gonna promise you nothing bad happens because I've made that promise before and it's a bad promise. What I'll promise is, whatever walks into that ballroom, it deals with me before it gets to any of you. That's not bravery, it's just, that's the arrangement, that's what I'm for. Mavis looked at him for a long moment. "You are so my sister's kid," she said. "That good or bad? Ask me in a week." On the fifth night, the drone came back. Naruto felt it before he saw it, sitting up on the tower with his eyes closed, and the whole valley laid out in his head like a map made of heartbeats. 11 deer, a badger, 400 bats, Wayne's kids running something down in the North Woods that Wayne was going to have to apologize for. And out past the tree line, at 900 meters, moving at walking pace with no pulse and a battery hum, something patient. He didn't break it this time. He sent a clone the long way around, down through the ravine and up behind it, and had the clone watch. The drone hovered at the woodline for 11 minutes, panning slowly across the hotel's east face. It logged the windows. It lingered on the kitchens, the laundry chimney, and for 2 full minutes, the small stained glass round in the 4th tower where Dennis's room was. Then it turned and flew west, low and slow, and the clone followed it 4 miles before it went out over a lake and the clone lost it. Naruto came down the tower stairs 3 at a time and found Drac in the library with the coffin-sized ledger. "It's mapping the building," he said, "not the wards, the rooms, and it spent 2 minutes on Dennis's window." Dracula did not look up. He turned a page with a fingernail. "Crowley's does not use machines," he said. "He thinks electricity is a fad. I know, he thinks plumbing is a fad, old man." Drac closed the ledger. "I have made 41 telephone calls," he said, "in 3 days, which for me is a personal record and also a small tragedy. I have called every friend I have in 6 countries. Nobody has heard of a sanctuary. Nobody knows the hand and bat. Griffin found a shell company in Zurich that owns a shell company in Delaware that owns 11,000 acres in the Carpathians, and every one of those acres is a hole in the map." He steepled his fingers. "And Wanda's cousin's 3rd litter, the runt Bobo useless boy Sweet, vanished in Prague in April. His mother filed with the conclave. The conclave lost the file. How many others? Since January," Dracula's voice had gone very level, 19. "That I can confirm, all young, all ones nobody would fight a war over." Naruto sat down on the arm of a chair. "So this isn't about me?" "No." Drac finally looked at him, and there was something in his face that hadn't been there before, the look of a man who has spent 100 years building the strongest possible door and just noticed the wall has a hole in it. "You are the loudest thing that has happened here in a century, and something has been watching this hotel with tools I do not understand, and tomorrow night I must open my house to 60 vampires who want it closed." He spread his hands. "I would prefer these things were unrelated. They're not." "No," said Dracula, "they are not. The conclave arrived at full dark and they arrived beautifully." That was the part Naruto hadn't expected. He'd braced for gray coats and halberds. What came up the mountain road was a procession of 20 black carriages with no horses, running silent on iron-rimmed wheels, each one flanked by riders in high collars, and behind them a slow river of walkers in white, actual white, morning white, the old kind, carrying long candles that burned with no flame at all, just a cold blue light that made the fog glow. The hotel's guests had been cleared out or hidden. The lobby was empty. The ballroom had been stripped of the buffet, the banners, the disco ball Johnny had installed in 2016, and refilled with rows of high-backed chairs and a raised bench of black wood that had come out of the carriages in pieces and assembled itself. Naruto watched them build a courtroom in his grandfather's ballroom in 40 minutes and thought, "They've done this a lot." "Don't sit until they tell you," Drac murmured. He was in something formal, high-collared, with a chain of office he clearly hated. "Don't speak until they ask. Don't look at the second seat, she takes it as a challenge, old man. And if they ask about the fox, deny everything, old man." Naruto put a hand on his shoulder. "Breathe." "I do not breathe. I have not breathed since 1487, it's optional." Drac stopped, closed his eyes. "I am not good at this." "At what?" "At the part where I do not put my hand through someone's chest." "Yeah, well. Welcome to having a family." Naruto squeezed once and let go. "You'll get used to it, it sucks." And then the herald staff hit the floor 3 times, and Baron Meyer Crowley's came into the room. He was smaller than Naruto expected. Old, properly old, the kind of old that vampires apparently could get if they wanted to, all the way to white hair and liver spots and a slight stoop, which meant he'd chosen it, the way a general chooses to keep a scar. He walked with a cane he didn't need. His eyes were the pale gray blue of skimmed milk, and they went around the ballroom once, cataloging, and stopped on Dracula and did not soften. Nadia walked 2 steps behind him and to the left, gray coat, eyes front. She didn't look at Naruto at all, which was itself a kind of looking. "Vlad," said Kralys, "Myerk. You've painted the west wall. Twice since you last came. It was better red." The old man lowered himself onto the bench without hurrying, and 60 seated vampires arranged themselves around him like iron filings. "Let's not pretend. Bring out the boy." Naruto walked out into the middle of the floor with his hands in his pockets. He'd been asked to wear something formal. He'd compromised. Black pants, black shirt, and the orange jacket over the top, because he wasn't going to stand in a room full of people deciding whether he counted as a person while dressed as somebody else. A murmur went through the seats. He'd have bet money it was the jacket. "Name," said the clerk. "Naruto Uzumaki." "That is not a. It's the only one I've got, so it's gonna have to be." Kralys raised one finger and the clerk sat down. "Boy," the old man said, "do you know what this is? A trial." "No," Kralys' voice was dry and unbothered, a lecturer's voice. "A trial requires an accusation. You are not accused of anything. You have not done anything. This is an assay. We are here to determine what you are, and then to determine where you belong, and there is no punishment involved in either question. I want that understood, because in about 10 minutes your grandfather is going to start shouting about tyranny, and I would like the record to show that I opened with kindness." "That's a pretty scary way to say kindness." "It's the only honest way." Kralys leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, in your world, when a child is born with something inside him that could level a city, what do they do?" Naruto's face did not move. Behind him, very quietly, Dracula said, "Myerk." "I ask because I already know," said Kralys. "The conclave is old and slow, but it is not blind. And a hole opened in the eastern wards 9 days ago and something walked through it, and we have people who read the seams. I know you came from a sealed world. I know why it was sealed." His pale eyes did not blink. "So, what did they do with you?" "They put me in an apartment," Naruto said, "and told everyone not to talk to me." The ballroom was silent. "And how did that work out for them?" "Badly." Naruto held the old man's stare. "For about 12 years. Then it worked out great because I made it, because I refused to be the thing they decided I was. So if you're going somewhere with this, Baron, go there. I've got a long history of being the answer to that question, and nobody likes the answer." Something moved through the seated rows, not agreement, interest. It was the first time all night the conclave had looked at him instead of at his file. Kralys sat back. "Good," he said. "You're not stupid. That helps." He lifted a hand, and Nadia stepped forward and set a shallow silver bowl on the bench. "The assay is 3 questions," Kralys said. 1. Is he of the blood? 2. Is he somacula, sun-stained, offline out of the pattern? 3. Is he a danger to the concealment? The first 2 are chemistry, only the third is politics." He looked at Dracula. "Vlad, contest the first question and I will laugh at you." "I do not contest it," Dracula said. "He is my daughter's son. I have said so publicly. It is in the minute book." "Then let's have the bowl." They wanted a full cup. Naruto opened his own arm with a kunai before the clerk could produce whatever ceremonial thing was coming, which caused a small scandal and filled the bowl, and it was done inside a minute. The second seat came down to read it. She was a tiny ancient woman in white with milk-blind eyes, and she put both hands over the bowl without touching the blood, and stood there for a long time. Then she said something in a language Naruto didn't know, and sat down hard on the step, and had to be helped up. "Speak plainly, Ilinka," said Kralys. "It's hot," the old woman said. Her voice shook. "Myerk, it's hot. It's like holding my hands over a hearth. There's the dragon in it. That's clear. That's clean. That's Vlad's line and no mistake. I could pick it out of 100. And under it there's Keresti, Martha, God rest her." She wiped her mouth. "And then there's a third thing. And a fourth thing. And the fourth thing is awake and it knows I'm looking and it doesn't like it." "Tell her she has a nice hat," said Kurama. "Not now." "Is he of the blood?" Kralys said patiently. "Yes." "Is he somacula?" Ilinka laughed. It was a terrible sound. He walks in the sun, Myrk. He walked in it this morning. I can taste the morning on him. He's not stained, he's the other thing. The thing in the old books that we all agreed was a story. She turned her blind face toward Naruto. Zeuavnet, Daycomer. 1 in every 400 years, and the last 3 were burned by their own families before they were 9. 60 vampires started talking at once. Crowley's let it run for exactly 6 seconds and then put his cane down on the bench. 1 crack, and it stopped. "Third question," he said. "Now hold on." Dracula was on his feet. "Vlad, sit down. He is 19 years old and you are about to have this room vote on whether he is allowed to exist." "I'm about to have this room vote on whether he is allowed to exist in public," Crowley said, "which is a different thing and you know it is, and the fact that you're pretending otherwise tells me you already know you'll lose the vote." He turned back to Naruto. "Boy, third question. And I want you to actually think before you answer, because it's the only one that matters and everyone in this room is about to decide your life on it." He set both hands on the head of his cane. "Do you intend to hide?" The ballroom held its breath. "No," said Naruto, "don't rush it." "I'm not rushing it, it's just an easy question," he shrugged. "I don't hide, never have. I'm not gonna start because a guy with a nice cane asked me to." "Then you'll kill us all," said Myrk Crowley's. He said it without heat. That was what made it land. "Let me tell you what I am," the old man said, "since we're all being honest tonight, which is novel. I was born in a village called Mureni. It doesn't exist. In 1704, the men of 6 neighboring villages came at dawn with hooks and fire and they took Mureni apart house by house. And they were right to be frightened, understand me, because my uncle had been feeding on their children for 11 years and laughing about it at table. They were right. That is the part nobody in this room ever wants to hear. They were right, and they still killed my mother, who had never touched a human being in her life, and my 2 sisters, who were 9 and 4. He turned the cane in his hands. 1704, then 1821 in Iasi, 300 of us. Then 1889 in Prague, and I lost a wife. Then 1943, and you all know what 1943 was, and there were 11,000 of us in the ledger before the war and 4,000 after, and we did not lose them to humans with hooks, we lost them to humans with records, files, trains. Efficiency, his pale eyes came up. Every single time, boy, every single time in 400 years, the disaster began the same way. Not with a war, with one of us who was tired of hiding. He let that sit. My son, Crowley said, married a human woman. Nadia's head came around. He loved her, I'm told. I never met her. I refused to. And they had a daughter, and my son took his family out of the dark and lived in a town like a man, and for 4 years he was happier than I have ever been in 500. The old man's voice did not change at all. And then someone in that town noticed that the family down the road did not age. And they burned the house at 3 in the afternoon when he could not wake, and my granddaughter came out of it, and no one else did. The silence in the ballroom had teeth. "So," Crowley's looked at Naruto, "you will forgive me if I do not find your courage charming. I've buried more brave people than you have met. Bravery is what we call it when someone gambles with other people's children." Naruto was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Nadia, did he ever tell you that story before tonight?" Crowley's head snapped around. Nadia Crowley stood absolutely still in her gray coat, 2 steps behind and to the left, and her face was the face of somebody who has just been handed a piece of her own life by a stranger in a room full of witnesses. "No," she said. "Nadia. He told me they died in a fire." Her voice was steady and it cost her everything. "He never said the time of day. This is not the venue. 3 in the afternoon, Nadia said. You always said I could never be trusted in daylight because it was the human half showing. You put me in the gray at 12. You had me drill under blackout canvas for 6 years." She was looking straight ahead at nothing. "You weren't training me, grandfather. You were hiding me. I was keeping you alive." "Yeah," said Naruto. "That's what everybody says right before they lock a kid in a room." He walked forward 3 steps, right up to the foot of the bench, and 60 vampires flinched, and he didn't notice or didn't care. "You want to hear what I actually think?" he said. I think you're not wrong, that's the annoying part. You're not wrong about people. People are like that. I come from a place that started 4 wars because somebody was scared of somebody, and I've seen what a mob does, and I've seen what a village does to a kid it's decided is a monster, and I've got a real specific expertise in that, Baron, because I was the kid. Crowley said nothing. But here's the thing nobody told you. Naruto tapped the bench once with a knuckle. Hiding doesn't make them stop. It makes them guess. And what people guess is always worse than what's true. Every single time I ever showed somebody exactly what I was, no lying, no hiding, no shrinking, they either got over it or they got out of my way. That's not bravery, that's just math. Fear feeds on the dark, and you've been running a 400-year all-you-can-eat buffet. Pretty, said Crowley's. You'll notice you're describing a strategy that requires you to be strong enough to survive being wrong. Yeah, Naruto said. That's why I got strong. And the ones who aren't, they stand behind me. Somebody in the third row said, "Oh," out loud and covered their mouth. Crowley studied him for a long moment. Something in the old man's face was working. "You know," he said at last, "in another century I might have liked you. We've still got tonight." "No," Crowley's lifted a paper off the bench. "We don't, because I have one more item, and after it, nobody in this room will be talking about philosophy." He held the paper up. This is a conclave census page. District 14, Uzushio Survivors Registry, dated the 9th of March, 1961. Dracula went very still. It records a red-haired female child, Crowley's read, of unconfirmed lineage exhibiting sun tolerance, resident in a sealed jurisdiction, flagged for observation and left unmolested by unanimous vote of the seated 9. He lowered the paper. "I was seat 4. I voted to leave her where she was. The sound Dracula made was not human. You knew." "I knew there was a girl." Crowley's did not flinch as the temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees and frost climbed the walls. "I did not know she was yours. Nobody did. The file said unconfirmed lineage because the man who wrote it never went inside the seal. He read the seam from a hilltop in Manchuria and he wrote down what he could smell." His jaw tightened. "I voted to leave her, do you understand? Half this bench wanted a retrieval team. I said no. I said let the child grow up wherever she washed ashore, because a sealed world is the safest place a sunwalker can possibly be. You could have told me. Told you what?" And there it was, the first crack in the old man, his voice going up like a whip crack. "That there was a red-haired girl on the other side of a wall we could not open, in a country we could not enter, who might be the daughter you had already put in the ground. You had spent 30 years dragging rivers, Vlad. You had gone mad. You'd have burned a hole in that seal with your own hands and gone in after her, and every hunter and hound and government on this earth would have followed you through it, and the last untouched world in creation would have been on fire inside a decade." He slammed the cane down. "So I made a choice, and I have carried it for 64 years, and I will tell you exactly what I told myself every night since. She is alive, and she is safe, and she is happy, and she does not know us, and that is the best ending anyone in this family has ever gotten." His voice failed on the last word. Naruto looked at the old man for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "She was happy." Crowley's head came up. "She was really happy," Naruto said. "For about 30 years. She had a husband who was dumb about her and a whole village that was scared of her in a good way, and she made ramen so bad the shop owner used to hide when he saw her coming, and she died holding a door shut so I could get out." He shrugged, and it was the worst shrug in the world. "So you got what you wanted, Baron, just not the last part. Nobody gets the last part." Meyer Crowley sat down. He hadn't been standing exactly, but he sat down anyway into himself. "I am sorry," he said, and then the windows exploded. There was no warning. Naruto's sage mode was up. It had been up all night, and there were no hearts out there, no breath, no chakra, nothing but the mountain, which meant that whatever came through the ballroom's 40 tall windows in the same half-second had gotten close in vehicles with no living things in them, and then been fired from a distance. Canisters. 60 of them, fat and gray, tumbling. They hit the parquet and blew, and the ballroom filled with white gas that smelled like a struck match and burning church silver. Vampires screamed. It wasn't gas the way gas usually worked. It clung. It ate. Naruto watched a seated elder in white put his hands up and watched the skin come off his palms in sheets, and the whole conclave came out of its chairs in a wave of panic and bats and shrieking. And then the second thing happened. The ceiling opened. Not the roof, the chandeliers. 6 of them hung there for 100 years, split down their spines and dropped, and what unfolded out of them on articulated arms were rings of glass lenses, and every lens lit at once. Sunlight. Not fake, not close enough to fake, actual, spectrum-perfect, high-noon daylight. 6 columns of it, sweeping the ballroom in a slow, rotating pattern like a lighthouse from hell. The first sweep caught 11 vampires, and they simply were not there anymore. DOWN, Naruto roared, and the word came out with enough chakra behind it to knock the front row flat, which was the point. He crossed the room in one step, hit the nearest hanging lamprey with a racing gun, and it detonated into a rain of glass, and the next one lit up and swept where he'd been standing and caught him full across the chest. It felt like standing in a warm shower. Naruto stopped, blinked, looked down at himself on fire with light entirely fine. "Oh," he said, "oh, you idiots." Then he was a blur. 2 more arrays came down in pieces. The gas was a bigger problem. It hung, and it was heavier than air, and it was pooling down where people had fallen. He went through 60 hand signs worth of nothing, and just used the simplest thing he knew. 100 clones, an enormous coordinated futon, and the ballroom's entire atmosphere got shoved out through the broken windows in one hammering gust that took the curtains with it. "Get them out," he shouted. "West doors, old man, get them out." Dracula was already moving. He'd gone somewhere past rage into something economical and horrible, a black scything shape hauling elders bodily out of the light 3 at a time, and every place he touched down the shadows deepened and reached, and Naruto saw one of the remaining sun arrays get swallowed by darkness so thick it went out like a candle. "NADI," that was Crowley's. The old man was on his feet at the bench, alone in a room turning to ash, and he was not looking for an exit. He was looking for his granddaughter. She was at the north door, fighting. Naruto's head came around, and for the first time all night his stomach dropped, because there were figures coming through the north door, and they were not vampires and they were not hunters. They wore soft gray, not conclave gray, a paler, cleaner shade, and full hoods with mirrored faceplates, and they moved in disciplined 4-man stacks, and they were carrying equipment. Not weapons, not mostly, restraints, padded restraints. Hooked poles with loops on the end like animal control, injector guns, and on their belts in neat rows, collars matte black, thick as a fist, with a small green light on each one. They weren't killing anybody, they were collecting. "CLONES," Naruto bellowed, and 400 of him filled the ballroom. For about 9 seconds it was a rout. His clones hit the stacks like a landslide, and the gray figures went down in heaps, and Naruto himself went through the north doorway and out into the corridor and found the whole hallway full of them, dozens, a supply line running from the service entrance, and he started at one end and worked. He didn't kill them. He noted distantly that he could have. He was 40 feet down the hall when the collar hit him. It came from a shoulder launcher, a black ring that opened in flight and closed around his throat with a magnetic clack, and Naruto grabbed it and pulled, and it did not come off, and then the little green light turned red. Every drop of chakra in his body slammed to a stop. It was the single most horrifying sensation of his life, worse than the seal, worse than being hollowed out on the war's last day. Not pain, absence. Sage mode blinked out. Kurama's voice cut off mid-snarl like a door closing. His clones popped, all 400 at once, a wave of white smoke rolling back down the corridor. Naruto dropped to one knee. "Subject is collared," said a voice, calm and female and mechanical from every faceplate at once. "Team 4, converge, handle gently. Dr. Krieg wants him undamaged." Naruto looked up through his hair at the 12 figures walking toward him and started to laugh. "Gently," he said. He stood up. There was no chakra in it. There was nothing in it but 19 years of getting hit and getting up, and a body that had spent every one of those years being hammered into a shape, and somewhere underneath, in the plumbing, in the part that had turned toward Dracula on the stairs like a sunflower, something else that the collar didn't recognize as chakra at all and hadn't thought to block. His teeth ached. The first one to reach him got hit so hard the faceplate came off in 3 pieces, and the man went down the corridor and through a wall. The second one Naruto took by the front of the suit and threw into the ceiling. He was moving faster than he had any right to without chakra. His hands were cold. Everything smelled like blood and he could hear all their heartbeats going, every one, quick and terrified inside the comm gear. He put 9 of them down in 11 seconds, and he was reaching for the 10th when the wall behind him blew in, and something came through it that was not a person. It was 8 feet tall, and it wore the same soft gray, and it had been, at some point, a werewolf. Now it had plating over the ribs and a housing on the back of its skull, and one arm that ended in a socket with a rotating cluster of injectors, and its eyes were open and perfectly empty, and it moved with a smoothness no animal had. It hit Naruto in the chest with the socket arm and drove him 90 feet down the corridor and into the wine cellar stairs. Ribs went. He felt at least 3. The thing came down the stairs after him without hurrying, and Naruto rolled up onto his feet in a spray of broken bottles, one arm hanging wrong, no chakra, no clones, no fox, and grinned at it with red in his teeth. "Okay," he said. "Now it's Tuesday." He fought it in the dark for 2 minutes. He lost, technically. It got the injector into his shoulder twice, and he felt something cold going into him that made the edges of the room go soft. But he'd been aiming at the housing on the back of its skull the entire time, and on the last exchange, with his vision doubling, he got his good hand on it and twisted, and something crunched. The thing stopped. It stood in the wine cellar with wine running down the walls, and it made a sound, not a growl. A whine. A high, thin, confused whine, like a dog waking up somewhere it doesn't know. Then it turned around and walked back up the stairs and did not come back. Naruto crawled after it. He came up into a ballroom that was on fire and empty. Not empty of bodies, empty of people. The conclave was gone, dead in ash piles or fled or dragged. He couldn't tell which, and there were far too few ash piles for 60 vampires, and that was somehow the worst part. Chairs were smashed. The black bench had been split in half. Frost and fire were fighting on the west wall. Dracula was on his knees in the middle of the floor. There was a collar on the ground in front of him, cracked open. He'd gotten it off. His hands were burned black to the wrist from doing it. "Old man." "They took her," Dracula said. Naruto stopped. "Mavis went for Dennis," Drac said. His voice had nothing in it. "They were in the tower. They had the tower. They came in through the tower, they knew which room. They came in through the round window, and there were 6 of them waiting in the corridor with a box, Naruto. They put my grandson in a box. Where's Johnny?" "He went out the window after the truck." "Where's Johnny?" "He is alive. They left him. They left all the humans. They don't." Dracula's burned hands closed on nothing. "They tagged him, like a bird. They put a tag in his shoulder and left him in the courtyard because he doesn't count." Naruto stood in the burning ballroom and did not move for 3 seconds. "Kit," said Kurama, quietly from wherever he'd been. The collar was off. Naruto didn't remember taking it off. He was holding it. It was in 11 pieces. "Kit, breathe. You are about to do something that will take the top off this mountain, and your family is not on this mountain." He breathed. "Nadia," he said, "here." She was in the north doorway, holding herself up on the frame. Her gray coat was gone, burned off, most of one sleeve, and the skin under it was blistered where the gas had eaten through. She had a mirrored faceplate in her hand, torn off somebody, and blood all down her front that wasn't hers. Behind her, on the floor of the corridor, Baron Meyer Crowley's was sitting against the wall with his legs out in front of him like a child. He was looking at his own hands. Naruto walked over and crouched down in front of him. The old man's eyes came up slowly. "They had a list," Crowley said. "Yeah. Not a list of us, a list of names. They came through that room and they went past me, twice. 2 of them looked at me and moved on." His voice was strange, floating. "I am 511 years old, and I am the 4th seat of the Blood Conclave, and they did not want me. They wanted the young ones. They wanted the vassal girl. She's 40. She's a baby." He stopped. "They wanted the ones who'd still be worth something in 100 years. Baron, I built the concealment." Crowley's was not really talking to him. "I wrote 9 of the 11 articles. I have spent 400 years teaching every child of the blood to make themselves small and quiet and unfindable. And tonight something walked into the safest room in Europe and took 30 of them out of it in 6 minutes, and it did not need to find us." He looked up, and his pale eyes were wet and absolutely lucid. It already knew where we were, all of us. It has known for years. Boy, you cannot hide from someone who has a file. Naruto put a hand on the old man's shoulder. No, he said. You can't. They took my, Crowley's voice broke completely. Nadia, are you? I'm here, grandfather. They put their hands on you. They tried. Nadia dropped the faceplate on the floor. Sir, I'm resigning my commission. Nadia. You can have the coat back. It's mostly gone. She stepped over the wreckage and stood in front of Naruto, and her chin was up and her hands were shaking, and she looked him dead in the eye. You, daycomer. You're going after them. Yeah, take me. Nadia, said Crowley's. He's the only one in this building who can walk into a place lit like the surface of the sun, she said without turning. And I'm the only one in this building who can walk beside him for 6 hours before I start to cook. There is nobody else, grandfather. There is literally nobody else. That's the whole point of what we are, and you've spent my entire life trying to make it not true. Silence. Meyer Crowley's got up off the floor. It took him a while. He straightened the collar of his coat and became, in about 4 seconds, the fourth seat of the blood conclave again, and when he spoke his voice was iron. Vlad, he said. Dracula raised his head. The conclave will convene an emergency session in Volterra at dusk tomorrow, and it will be a screaming shambles, and half of them will vote to seal every door in Europe and sit in the dark for a century. Crowley's jaw set. I am going to Volterra. I am going to stand on that floor and tell 60 terrified old monsters that the concealment is dead, that it has been dead for years and we simply hadn't been informed, and I am going to demand they open the vaults and give you everything. Every hunter file, every map, every name we have ever bought. They'll strip your seat, Dracula said, almost certainly. The old man permitted himself the ghost of a smile. It was better read, Vlad, the wall. He walked out. Naruto watched him go. Then he turned and looked at the ballroom, at the ash on the parquet, at the ruined chandeliers, at his grandfather on his knees with his hands burned off and his whole family gone. And something in him settled. Not rage. He knew rage, they were old friends, rage was loud. This was the other thing, the thing that had gotten him through the valley of the end and the war and every impossible morning of his life. A kind of terrible cheerfulness, cold and bright and absolutely certain, that arrived when the problem got simple enough. Griffin, he shouted. Here, a pair of glasses hovering in the doorway, filthy. Kid, I gotta tell you, I hid in a chandelier and I saw everything and I'm not okay. You said Zurich, the shell company. Why, yeah. How fast can you get me the 11,000 acres? The glasses steadied. I've got a guy, 2 hours, maybe less if I'm allowed to commit crimes. Commit crimes. Awesome. Naruto knelt down and got an arm under his grandfather and hauled him up onto his feet. Hey, he said, look at me. Dracula looked at him. There was nothing in the vampire's face at all. 500 years of practice at putting a good face on things had finally, completely run out. I built this place so it would never happen again, Drax said. I know. It happened again. Yeah, it did. Naruto held him up. So now we go get them back. That's the next part. That's the only next part, and I need you to be pointed at it because I've done this before and I'm gonna tell you the one true thing about it. He got right in the old man's face. You don't grieve during the rescue, old man. You grieve after, and if it goes the way I say it goes, you don't grieve at all. Something came back into Dracula's eyes. It was not hope. It was much older and much sharper than hope, and Naruto had seen it once before in a mirror at the bottom of a valley. Yes, said Dracula. The sun came up at 6:11. By then the great doors of Hotel Transylvania had been opened all the way, and the courtyard was full. Frank with a fire axe in both arms taped on tighter. Wayne and Wanda leaving 400 children in the care of a very frightened front desk zombie. Murray sitting on a crate wrapping his own wrists. Griffin's glasses hovering over a laptop that seemed to be floating. Eunice, the witches, the ogre cooks, half the housekeeping staff. Johnny in the middle of it with a bandage on his shoulder and his phone out, dead-eyed, playing the 11 seconds of shaky footage he'd taken of the truck for anyone who'd look. Nadia Crowley stood at the front, in Mavis's borrowed jacket, with 2 silver halberds crossed on her back and a hood in her hand she hadn't put on yet. Dracula stood at the top of the steps in the shadow of the arch, with a black parasol Frank had found in lost property and his hands wrapped, and every bat in the valley circling above the towers in a slow, furious spiral. Griffin's glasses turned. Got it, Sanctuary 9. It's a hole, kid. It's 400 meters straight down under a decommissioned mine in the Fagaras, and the surface footprint is a gift shop. Distance, 160 kilometers. Naruto looked at the sky. It was the good kind of morning, the kind that came after a storm. Cloudless, cold, the light coming up over the eastern ridge in a long gold bar that reached across the valley and hit the courtyard and made every monster in it hiss and shuffle backward under the arch. Naruto Uzumaki walked down the steps and out into it. He stopped in the middle of the courtyard in the full light of a rising sun and turned around. Behind him, in the dark under the arch, 40 monsters stared at the boy standing in the one thing they had all been running from their entire lives. He put a hand up and shaded his eyes and grinned at them. "Okay," said Naruto. "Who's coming?" Chapter 3. The sun doesn't scare me. The convoy left the mountain at 7 in the morning, which was, as Murray pointed out, roughly every 11 minutes, the single stupidest hour in the entire 24. I'm just saying. The mummy was wedged in the back of the hotel's blackout van with a beach umbrella he had refused to relinquish. Historically, sunrise raids, not our thing, that's their thing. That's like the whole thing they do to us. Murray, I'm supportive, I'm very supportive. I'm also on fire in 3 separate places. Those are your bandages, man. They've been like that since 1400 BC. Naruto rode on the roof. He sat cross-legged on the van's blackout shell with his eyes shut and the wind pulling at his jacket, and he held Sage Mode wide open, wider than he usually bothered, until 160 kilometers of Romanian mountainside unrolled inside his skull. Deer, farmers, a hawk. 3 towns worth of ordinary breathing people who had never once thought about any of this. And ahead, at the edge of what he could reach, a hole in it. A place with no life in it at all that had shape. "You're doing the thing again," said Nadia. She'd come up through the roof hatch an hour back and stayed, hunched in Mavis's borrowed jacket with the hood up and her hands in her sleeves, letting the morning light hit her in careful increments like someone testing bathwater. "What thing?" "The thing where your face goes orange around the eyes and you stop blinking and everyone in the van gets quiet. They get quiet. Frank's been holding his breath for 4 minutes. He doesn't need to breathe. He's doing it out of respect." Naruto snorted and let the sage chakra drop back to a simmer. They rode in silence for a while. The road ran along a river the color of dishwater, and the mountains ahead had snow on them, and the sun was fully up now, hard and clean and unbothered. "Does it hurt?" he asked. Nadia looked at her own hand out from under the sleeve, palm up in the light. It had gone a faint pink like a sunburn caught early. "It aches," she said, "like standing too close to a stove. 6 hours before it's a real problem, 8 before I stop being useful." She pulled the hand back. "I've never actually tested it past 4. He'd have known. Your grandpa. He'd smell it on me." She said it flatly. "Sun gets in your hair. There's no washing it out for a day or so. I used to stand in the tack room window at the Volterra house for 11 minutes at a time because 11 minutes doesn't stick. That's a really specific number. It's a very specific childhood." Naruto laughed. Then he stopped laughing because ahead on the ridge road a squat little building had come into view. A gravel lot, a rack of postcards visible through the window, a hand-painted sign reading Mine Museum and Gift Shop, closed for season, and a satellite array on the roof that would have served a small city. "Griffin," he said into the collar radio. That's it. Elevators inside behind a fake wall, and it's a 12-minute descent with 3 security checks. Great, not doing that. Naruto, everybody out." The van doors banged open, and 40 monsters piled into a gravel parking lot at 8:40 in the morning, most of them under parasols, all of them looking like the worst tour group in Europe. Dracula came out last, under Frank's black umbrella, and stood in the shade of the van with his bandaged hands folded and looked at the gift shop for a long moment. "There's a woman inside," he said. "Yeah, 1 heartbeat behind the counter." Naruto rolled his shoulders. "She's already called it in. Her pulse went up 11 seconds ago and she's been talking since." "Then we've lost surprise." "Old man," Naruto grinned at him. "We never had surprise. They've been filming your house for a month. They know exactly who's coming." He cracked his knuckles. "What they don't know is that I don't use doors." He walked out to the middle of the gravel lot, about 40 meters from the building, and put a hand flat on the ground. "Griffin." 400 meters straight down, you said. 392 to the top deck. Everybody stand back. Kid, what are you? Wayne, said Naruto, cover your kid's ears. They're at home, cover 'em anyway. He put his other hand over the first, and the air over the parking lot went strange. Sage chakra came up through his arms and turned gold, and something began to form under his palms, not a sphere but a drill, a long spiraling cone of shrieking blue light that sank into the gravel like a needle into skin, and the whole mountainside began to hum. Hey Kurama, Naruto said, you want to help? You need to ask. Red bled up his arms. The drill doubled, tripled, went white in the middle, and the noise it made was not a noise so much as a hand on everyone's sternum. Omacron Racing Rengen, Naruto said conversationally, shaft addition, and he pushed. The ground did not explode. That was the horrifying part. 40 monsters had braced for an explosion, and instead the earth simply opened, a perfect 9-meter circle of granite and shale and old mine tailings unmaking itself into dust that got sucked down and away. And the drill went in, and in, and in, and the hum dropped in pitch as it fell, and a plume of pulverized rock blew straight up over the ridge and hung there like a tree. 12 seconds later, there was a sound very far below like a bank vault losing an argument. Naruto stood up and dusted off his hands. In the middle of the parking lot was a hole. It went straight down into darkness, and out of it came a rush of cold, filtered, faintly floral air, and very distantly an alarm. Behind him, Frankenstein said, in a small voice, I would like to formally apologize for every time I doubted this boy. You never doubted him. I doubted him silently, Wayne, and I'm making it right. Naruto turned around. The whole crowd was staring at him, Wanda with her hands over her mouth, Johnny with his phone up and his hands shaking, Nadia looking at the hole and then at him and then at the hole with an expression that had given up on being professional. Okay, said Naruto. Here's how this goes. He made a hand sign and the parking lot filled with him. 200, 300, 400 clones, shoulder to shoulder across the gravel and up the ridge and standing on the roof of the gift shop. They've got 60 plus of hours down there, and they've had them for months, some of them years. The original's voice carried flat and easy over 400 identical faces. So we're not doing a stealth thing. We're doing a flood. Clones go first every corridor, every door, every room. You find a cell, you open it. You find a person, you get them to the shaft. You find one of those collars, you break it, and you tell me. 400 voices said, got it. Frank, Wayne, Murray, Eunice, you're on the shaft head with 20 clones. Anything that comes up that isn't ours goes back down. Griffin, you're in their network the second we're inside. Johnny, I'm coming down. Johnny, they put a chip in my shoulder and took my son. Johnny's voice cracked in the middle and he did not stop. I dug it out with a steak knife in the courtyard and I'm coming down, man, so either you carry me or I jump. Naruto looked at him for a second, then he nodded. You ride with me. He turned to his grandfather. Dracula stood at the lip of the hole under a borrowed umbrella, 549 years old, hands burned to the wrist, staring into 400 meters of dark. There will be light down there, Drac said. A great deal of it. They will have built the whole place to hold people like me. Yeah, I have never in my life walked into a room built to kill me. Yeah, you have. Naruto put a hand on his shoulder. You've just never had backup. Dracula's mouth did something complicated. Then the umbrella fell out of his hands and he came apart into 2,000 bats, and every one of them went screaming down the hole at once. All right, Johnny yelled and grabbed Naruto's arm. Let's get him, my kid. Sanctuary 9 was beautiful. That was the thing Naruto had not been ready for. He'd expected a dungeon. He'd expected concrete and drains and the smell of a place where things go wrong on purpose. Instead, he landed in a 9-meter crater in the middle of a lobby, pale wood floors, a living wall of ferns with a soft irrigation hiss, warm indirect lighting in recessed coves, a water feature. Somewhere from hidden speakers, something soft with a lot of strings still playing. On the far wall in brushed steel letters 2 feet high, you are safe here, and under it in smaller letters, Sanctuary 9 Est. 1961. A Krieg Foundation facility. Naruto set Johnny down on the ferns and looked around at the rubble of the ceiling he'd just dropped through, and the 400 clones pouring down the shaft behind him like water down a drain, and said, Huh, dude, it's a spa. Yeah, it's a spa. They took Dennis to a spa. Johnny, Naruto pointed. Set into the wall beside the ferns was a small brass plaque, the kind you'd find beside a fire extinguisher. In case of containment event, proceed calmly to nearest daylight room. Do not attempt to assist guests. The music cut out. A chime played 3 soft notes, the kind that means your flight is boarding, and then a woman's voice came out of the ceiling, everywhere at once, warm and unhurried and touched with an accent Naruto couldn't place. Good morning. 400 clones stopped moving. My name is Dr. Helena Krieg, and I am the director of this facility. To the individual who has just opened a 9-meter hole in my atrium, I would like to say first that no one here is going to shoot at you. That's a great start, said Johnny. Second, I have already ordered my keepers to fall back to the residential decks and secure our guests in place, and to use no lethal force whatsoever. I would ask you to extend us the same courtesy, though I understand if you don't. Third, and here, for the first time something moved under the calm, you have come here to take back people you love, and I have them, and I am not going to give them to you. So we're going to have a difficult morning. I'm sorry about that. I'd like you to know that I do mean it. The chime played again and the music came back on. Naruto tilted his head at the ceiling. Griffin, you in? I'm in. Kid, I'm in, and it's worse than we thought. The invisible man's voice was thin. Their guest registry has 1,400 entries. 1,400. Going back to 1961, and there's a status column. How many active? 612. Somewhere above, in the dark of the shaft, 2,000 bats began to scream. The first 3 decks were exactly what the lobby had promised, and Naruto learned to hate the place in about 90 seconds. They weren't cells. They were rooms. Nice ones, a bed with a good duvet, a chair, a desk, a shelf of paperbacks, a window that wasn't a window but a very good screen showing a forest at dusk. Each door had a small card slot with a printed name and species, and a little line reading intake and a date. Bogdanvasile, Revenant Intake 04111988, 37 years. The doors were not locked either, and that was the worst part. They opened from the inside. There was just nowhere to go, and every occupant had a slim gray collar around their throat with a small green light. And when Naruto's clones came through the corridors shouting, most of the doors didn't open at all. The ones that did opened slowly. Ma'am. A clone crouched in a doorway in front of a woman with moth wings folded around herself like a shawl. Ma'am, we're getting everyone out. There's a shaft in the atrium and it goes to the surface, and the surface is a mountain in Romania and it's morning up there. It's not safe, the moth woman said. They told us it isn't safe. She wasn't afraid of him. That was what got the clone. She was concerned for him. There are people up there with cameras now. Everyone has a camera, doctor. Krieg showed us the footage. You can't hide anymore, dear. It's not like it was. The clone reached out very slowly and put 2 fingers under the collar and snapped it like a breadstick. The moth woman made a sound. Lady, said the clone, I'm gonna be real with you. I've got 400 bodies and about 9 hours of patience, and my little cousin is somewhere in this building in a box. So I'm gonna go get him. And when I come back through here, this door's gonna be open, and there's gonna be a big green guy at the top of the shaft named Frank who cries about everything, and he'll walk you out. He stood up. You don't have to come, but nobody's telling you anymore. That part's over. By deck 4, the clones had run out of things to say and were just breaking collars. By deck 6, the keepers started fighting properly. They came in stacks like they had at the hotel, mirrored faceplates, hook poles, injectors, but they'd learned. They came in tight. They came at the shaft instead of at him, and they'd brought sun lamps on rolling frames, which did nothing to Naruto at all and turned 2 corridors into no-go zones for everyone else. Which was when Dracula stopped being subtle. Naruto felt it 2 decks up, the temperature of the entire building dropping 4 degrees at once, and then a scream that had 11 different registers in it. He came up a stairwell into a corridor where every light fixture had gone out, not broken, out, dark leaking out of the walls like ink in water. And the sun lamps were dead black lumps on their frames, and 8 keepers were flat on the floor with their faceplates fogged. His grandfather stood in the middle of it, up to his knees in shadow that wasn't cast by anything. They are not to be killed, Dracula said, in a voice like a door in a cellar. I have decided this. It is taking effort. You good? No, the vampire held up a hand. The bandages had burned off. The skin underneath was raw and new and pink, healing wrong and fast. There is a girl in room 614 who has been in this building since before Mavis was born. She asked me if I was staff. Yeah. She thanked me for the books. Yeah, old man. Dracula's jaw flexed. Where is my grandson? He said. Sub-level 11, said Griffin in both their ears. They're not in the residential decks. Krieg's got them logged as intake pending, and they're all in the same place. Mavis, Dennis, the vassal girl, everyone from the ballroom. 11's the medical deck, and it's on a separate elevator, and I can't touch its doors. It's on an air gap. Then I'll make a door, said Naruto. Kid, one more thing. Griffin's voice had gone strange. I'm in the facility power schema. There's a system on Sub-12 that's eating 90% of the plant. 90%. It's got its own reactor and its own name. What's it called? It's just called the engine, and there's a document attached to it. It's a procedure. A pause. It's called Dawn. Naruto and Dracula looked at each other. Griffin, Naruto said, what does Dawn do? It's a facility-wide containment failsafe. If the perimeter's breached past a threshold, the engine floods every deck at once. Full spectrum. Every corridor, every room, every square meter, no shadow anywhere. Griffin's glasses were somewhere far above them, and he still sounded like he was in the room. Kid, it doesn't have an off switch in the software. It's got a key and a countdown, and the countdown's already running. How long? 51 minutes. They took the medical deck the hard way. Naruto went down the elevator shaft with 100 clones and no elevator, and the doors at Sub-11 came off their tracks and traveled the length of a white corridor and through the far wall, and after that it stopped being a fight and became a demolition. He found the Keeper's commander in a monitoring room and put him through a bank of screens. He found the surgical suite empty and the specimen fridges full and did not stop to look. He found a rack of black collars, the heavy kind, the kind that had shut him off, and he stood in front of it for 1 second and then reduced the entire rack to powder with his bare hands. And he found at the end of the corridor, behind a door labeled Intake Holding, a room like a cathedral, rows of them, 60-odd upright cylinders of milky glass, each one lit from below, each one holding somebody. He recognized half of them from the ballroom. The little blind second seat, Ilinka, floating with her hands folded. The vassal girl, 2 of the white-robed elders, and in the middle of the row at the far end, 1 cylinder with a black-haired woman in it who had both hands flat against the inside of the glass and a collar on her throat and her eyes open. She'd been fighting. There were spiderweb cracks all through the glass in front of her fists. Mavis, Naruto crossed the room in a step and blew the cylinder apart. She came out swinging. He caught her wrist. She stopped, saw his face, and hit him anyway. Where is my son? I don't know yet. Hold still. He got 2 fingers under the collar and cracked it, and the light went from green to nothing, and Mavis Dracula went white-hot for about a second, hair floating, and then sagged against him with a sound like something tearing. They took him separately. Her voice was raw. They took him separately, Naruto. They said she came herself, the doctor. She came and looked at him in the box, and she said, oh, this one, and they took him and left me here. Behind them, Johnny arrived in the doorway at a dead sprint with a Keeper's hook pole in both hands. Mavis! They collided hard enough to break a human's ribs, and Naruto turned away and gave them 4 seconds, which was all he had. Griffin, where's the kid? Sub-12, Griffin sounded ill. He's on the engine deck. Kid, he's the only entry on the whole level. She's got him down there with the machine. Dracula came through the wall, not the door. The wall, a whole section of white composite panel disintegrating inward around a black shape that reassembled itself standing, and the temperature in the intake room went to nothing, and every remaining glass cylinder cracked at once. Where? Said Dracula. Down, said Naruto. With her. The vampire turned toward the far end of the room, where a heavy blast door was recessed into the wall with a stenciled 12 beside it. Old man, Naruto caught his sleeve. Hey. Listen to me for 8 seconds. Let go. 8 seconds. He didn't let go. There's a thing down there that turns the whole building into noon, and it's got a timer on it, and it's 40 minutes out. You are the worst possible person to walk into that room. That is my grandson. Yeah, and he's my cousin and I'm the guy who doesn't burn. Naruto's grip tightened. I'm not benching you, I'd never. I'm asking you to come in behind me. And I'm asking Mavis and Johnny to get 60 people up that shaft in under 35 minutes. Because if that thing goes off with anybody still on the residential decks, then it doesn't matter what we do down there. 612 people, old man. Somebody's gotta be the one who gets them out and it can't be me. Dracula stood there vibrating. You are exactly like her, he said. Yeah, I get that a lot lately. She used to hold the door too. Drac's eyes closed. When they opened, they were a man's eyes. 35 minutes, 35. And then I am coming through that floor, counting on it. Mavis was already halfway out the door with Johnny, shouting orders in a voice that could have run an army. Naruto turned to the blast door and found Nadia standing at his shoulder with her hood down. Her face was pink from cheek to jaw. 6 hours in the light, then a fight, and she'd stopped hiding it. Don't, she said before he opened his mouth. Wasn't going to. You were absolutely going to. I was going to say your face looks like a ham. Nadia stared at him and then made a noise that was 90% exhaustion and 10% laugh and hefted a halberd. Open the door, daycomer. Sub 12 was one room and the room was the size of a stadium and it was full of light. Not lit. Full. The engine hung in the middle of it. A sphere of interlocking mirror plates 30 meters across, suspended in a lattice of white steel, and inside the gaps between plates was something too bright to look at directly even for Naruto. It hummed at a frequency that lived in the teeth. Around it ran a spiral gantry, and off the gantry hung distribution conduits like the arms of an octopus, punching up through the ceiling toward every deck in the facility. At the base of the sphere on a platform there was a desk, an actual desk, wood with a green lamp on it and a chair, and a stack of files squared at the corners. And in front of the desk, in a small chair much too big for him, with his cape on and his knees pulled up, sat Dennis. Dennis, the boy's head came up. Naruto. Naruto crossed 200 meters of gantry in about a second and a half, and had the kid off the chair, and in the air before anything else in the room could react. And Dennis latched onto his neck so hard it actually hurt. I knew it, Dennis was saying into his collarbone, absolutely furious in the way that only a terrified 6-year-old can be. I knew you'd come, I told her. I told her my cousin makes 400 of himself and she said that was very exciting. Are you hurt? Did they? She gave me cocoa. Naruto looked over the boy's shoulder. The woman behind the desk stood up. She was small and neat and somewhere past 80 in the face and nowhere near it in the way she moved. White hair pinned back, cardigan, reading glasses on a chain which she took off and folded and set on the blotter. She had the calm, competent, faintly tired warmth of a country doctor at the end of a long shift. He wouldn't drink it, she said, which was smart of him actually. It was only cocoa, but he was right not to trust it and I told him so. You're Krieg. I am. She came around the desk with her hands visible and empty. You're the daycomer. May I ask your name? The file just says Anomaly Transylvania Blonde. Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto. She said it carefully, getting it right on the first try. Thank you. Names matter to me. Every one of my guests has a name in the register and I've written all of them myself. Her eyes went past him. Miss Crowley's, your grandfather's granddaughter. You've got sun on you, 6 hours, 7. You should be very proud and you should also sit down before you fall down. I'll stand. Of course you will. Naruto set Dennis on the gantry behind him and pushed him gently toward Nadia. Take him up. I'm not leaving. Nadia, he didn't look away from Krieg. 31 minutes, take him up. Something in his voice worked. Nadia scooped Dennis under one arm like a rolled carpet, Dennis yelling in outrage the entire way, and went. That left 2 people at the bottom of the world with a small sun between them. You have, Krieg said, 29 minutes and 40 seconds. I rounded down for you, you were being generous. You can turn it off. I can, there's a physical key, it's in this room. She tilted her head. I won't. Lady, let me say the thing first, Krieg said, please. I've said it to 612 people, and I'd like to say it once to someone who can actually argue back, and then you can hit me, and I imagine that will be that. Naruto's hands were shaking. He made them stop. 29 minutes, he said. Go. Krieg walked to the gantry rail and put her hands on it and looked into the light. I was 19 years old in 1899, she said. Naruto went very still. My father was a natural philosopher and a fraud and a genuinely brilliant man, in that order, and he had a theory that the things in the hills were not devils but fauna. That they could be studied, cataloged, understood. She smiled slightly. He was right, of course. He was also a coward, and when the men in Curtia de Arges came to him and said, "Doctor, our children are being taken. Where do they live?" he sent his daughter to do the talking because she was 19 and pretty and no one would shoot her. The hum of the engine filled the pause. "I drew them a map," said Helena Krieg. "A house on the river with a red roof. I'd watched it for 4 months with a spyglass. I knew the woman went out at dusk, and I knew there was a child, and I knew. I had written it in my notebook, that the child sat on the roof at dawn." "Say the rest of it," Naruto said. His voice had gone somewhere flat and very far away. "They went at 3 in the afternoon and they burned it, and I stood on the hill and watched, and I have been standing on that hill for 126 years. She turned around. Her face hadn't changed. "That was my first monster. I have saved 1,411 since. It doesn't balance. I'm not a fool, I know it doesn't balance, nothing balances. But it is what I have done with the time. You kept them in boxes. I kept them alive. For the first time, Heat. Do you know how many of my guests were brought here bleeding? 406. Do you know how many were brought here after their family died in front of them? 211. I have a whole deck, Mr. Uzumaki, deck 9, and every single person on it came from a village that had figured out what they were. They came to me, some of them walked here, they found the door and they knocked. And then you never let them out." "No," said Krieg, "I never did." "Why?" "Because the world got cameras." She said it like a diagnosis. "In 1899, it took a mob 4 months and a spyglass and a stupid girl to find one house. Today, a child with a telephone can find a werewolf in 9 seconds and show him to 11 million people before breakfast. Your grandfather runs a hotel, Mr. Uzumaki, a hotel with a booking system. Do you understand how long that has left? Longer than this place. It has 11 years, maybe 15. And when it ends, it will not end with torches. It will end with a drone strike and a press conference and a very reasonable man on television explaining that the government simply had no choice." Krieg's hands had closed on the rail. "I have run the numbers every year for 64 years, and every year the number gets smaller, and I am the only person on this earth who has built the thing that actually works. Nobody dies here. Nobody is hunted here. Nobody's daughter comes out of a cellar into a burning house here. My guests get warm rooms and books and clean blood and 100 years of nothing happening to them. Nothing happening to them is the greatest gift anyone has ever offered your people, and every single one of you would rather be free and dead." "Yes," said Naruto. Krieg blinked. "Yes," he said again. "That's it. That's the answer. You said it better than I could have, and you still don't get it." He walked toward her along the gantry. "You're not wrong about the world. That's twice in 2 days somebody stood in front of me and been right about how bad people can be, and you know what? Congratulations. You're both right. People are scared and stupid, and they burn things they don't understand, and it happens over and over, and it's happening somewhere right now. Then. And you built a cage and called it a hug." He stopped in front of her. 612 people down here, and you're the only one who's ever gonna leave. You've got a key in your pocket. You've got an elevator. You go up to your gift shop and you look at the sky, and then you come back down and tell everybody it's not safe out there." He shook his head slowly. "Lady, I've met people who did what you did. Every single one of them started out sad about it. And then one day they weren't sad anymore, they were just in charge." Krieg's mouth thinned. "You're 19, she said. "Yeah, you have no idea what it costs to keep people alive. I've got a couple ideas." "Then you'll understand," said Helena Krieg, "why I'm not going to let you take 600 of my guests up a hole in the ground into open daylight in front of an unsecured mountainside where I have counted, this morning, 9 private aircraft with camera pods." She reached into her cardigan pocket. Naruto moved and stopped because what she came out with wasn't a weapon. It was a small brass whistle. "I'm sorry about this," she said and blew it. The sound was almost too high to hear. It went through the room and up through the conduits and out into the whole facility, and somewhere far above, something answered. The floor of the engine deck cracked open along a seam, and the thing came out of it. Naruto had fought it in a wine cellar in the dark. In the light, it was so much worse. 8 feet of wolf with a spine of white composite plating, both arms replaced below the elbow, a housing on the back of its skull that he had personally cracked and that someone had patched with a fresh, gleaming, newer part. Its jaw hung slightly open. Its eyes were pale amber and there was nothing behind them. Around its throat, riveted to the plating, was a collar with a green light. "His name is Bogdan," said Krieg. "He came here in April from Prague. He was 11 months old in wolf years and he'd been beaten nearly to death by 4 men outside a nightclub, and when we brought him in he could not walk and would not eat and screamed for 11 days. "Bobo," said Naruto. Krieg's head turned sharply. "His mother filed a report," Naruto said. "She's got a name. She's in a van at the top of a shaft 400 meters above your head, and his Aunt Wanda's up there too, and she's got 400 kids and she's been crying since Prague. He would have died in that alley. He'd have gone home. He is going to hold you," said Krieg, "for 26 minutes, and she stepped back and Bobo came off the floor." It was a bad fight, and Naruto hated every second of it, and he was not able to be gentle for most of them. The thing was fast and it did not care about pain, and it had been built by someone who understood exactly how much force a chakra-reinforced body could take. It caught him twice with the injector arm, and both times he got the socket turned aside at the last instant, and the second time the needles went 11 centimeters into a gantry strut and stuck, and Naruto used the 2 seconds to put a Rasengan into the composite plating over its ribs. The plating held. The wolf under it screamed. That was the part that got him. It screamed, and it wasn't a machine noise, it was a puppy's noise, and Naruto flinched, and the arm came free and took him across the temple and put him through the safety rail and off the gantry entirely. He caught the edge one-handed 40 feet down, hung there for a second with his ears ringing, and heard Krieg's voice above, perfectly level. "You've got 19 minutes. He'll take all of them. He doesn't stop." Naruto looked up at the underside of the gantry. "Kit," said Kurama, "you know what this is. Yeah, the collar's the wrong shape for a seal, but it's not the wrong shape for a leash. Yeah. So stop trying to break the boy and go break the hand that's holding him." Naruto grinned with blood in his teeth, and let go and dropped. He hit the deck plating 40 feet below and ran, straight out under the sphere of the engine, into the part of the room where the light came down like a physical weight. The hot zone, the place the whole facility was built around, where the mirror plates focused into a column of raw daylight bright enough to bleach the floor white. He ran into the middle of it and stopped and turned around. Bobo came off the gantry after him without hesitating and hit the edge of the column and stopped mid-leap and dropped to all fours and skidded, and every fiber of the thing's ruined body locked up at once. Because it was a werewolf, and the machinery in its skull could override fear and pain and love and memory. But 300,000 years of don't go in the light was not in the skull. "There it is," Naruto said. "Bogdan," Krieg's voice from up on the gantry sharp for the first time. "Forward." The thing screamed and did not move. "You built a leash," Naruto called up, "out of a dog." And he walked out of the light, straight at it, and hit it in the housing on the back of the skull with a Rasengan the size of a marble and a great deal of care. The patch job came apart. The thing dropped like someone had cut its strings. It hit the deck plating and lay there twitching, and then it stopped twitching, and then, very slowly, it lifted its head, and the amber eyes had something in them. It looked at Naruto. It made the wine again, the high, thin, confused one from the wine cellar, and Naruto crouched down in front of 8 feet of augmented apex predator and put a hand on its enormous ruined head. "Hey," he said. "Bobo. Your mom's upstairs, man." Then he reached out and snapped the collar off its throat. Helena Krieg was already running for the desk. She got there. She got the drawer open and got the key out, a stubby brass thing on a chain, and she was turning toward the console when Naruto arrived beside her and took her wrist, gently, the way you'd take something from a toddler. 19 minutes, she said. 15 now. You can't get 600 people up a shaft in 15 minutes. They're already going. Griffin's been counting since we hit the atrium. Naruto plucked the key out of her fingers. 400 clones, lady, 400. That's 400 pairs of hands opening doors while you and me were talking philosophy. Krieg went the color of the walls. How many are left? 90. And there's a Frankenstein at the top of the hole hauling them out 2 at a time, and there's 100 and something bats doing shuttle runs. That's not enough time. Then turn it off. I can't. And there it was finally, the crack, the thing under the cardigan. Her voice went up and broke. It isn't a switch. It's a shutdown cycle. It's 4 minutes of magnetic bleed, and if the field collapses uneven, the containment plates open all at once and the whole deck. She stopped. Her hands were shaking. You would need to hold them physically. 30 tons of mirror plate, all 30 closed for 240 seconds while the field goes down. Naruto looked up at the sphere. Okay, he said. You cannot, Griffin, he shouted. 90 left. How long? 9 minutes if nobody argues. Old man, Naruto bellowed at the ceiling. It's been 35. The ceiling of sub-12 came down. It came down in a single black wave. 400 square meters of composite panel and conduit and structural steel just ceasing in a spreading circle. And out of the hole came something that was not 2,000 bats and was not a man and was, briefly, both, and Dracula landed on the engine deck in a crouch with his cape settling around him, and his eyes lit like brake lights. Grandpa, said Naruto, I need 400 more of me and I need you to hold the West Arc. Done. Then Drax saw Krieg. Naruto had never seen anything move that fast in his life, and he'd fought gods. One instant Dracula was 30 meters away, and the next he had Helena Krieg lifted off the floor by the front of her cardigan, and her feet were kicking a foot above the deck plating. I know your face, Dracula said. Yes. You were on the hill. Yes. You had a green shawl and you did not run when the roof came in. You watched. I have had 126 years of that face in every mirror I have ever. Yes, said Helena Krieg. I'm the girl with the map. It's me. I've known you were coming for 126 years, and I have wanted very badly for most of them to be found. Her feet had stopped kicking. Do it however you like. I only ask that you turn the engine off first because there are 400 of your people still under it. Dracula's arm shook. Old man. Naruto's hand landed on his grandfather's shoulder. 11 minutes. Nothing happened for 2 full seconds. Then Dracula set Helena Krieg down on her feet and straightened her cardigan for her with 2 burned hands and said, in a voice like a grave, later, and turned and walked toward the west arc of the sphere. Here is what 612 people saw from the shaft on the day Sanctuary 9 came apart. A boy in an orange jacket, standing under a small sun, splitting into 400 and then into 800, and every one of them putting their hands on a mirror plate the size of a bus and bracing. A vampire holding the entire West Arc alone, in a column of black that ate the light around it, screaming in a language that predated Latin, with steam coming off his shoulders. A key turning. The engine's hum climbed. It climbed past music and into something that made noses bleed on Deck 9, and the mirror plates shoved, 30 tons each all at once, trying to open like a flower, and 800 pairs of hands shoved back. 240 seconds. Griffin shrieked in everyone's ears. Starting now, clones started popping at 11 seconds. Not from force, from light, the raw output through the plate gaps, which turned out to be the one thing in the world that a shadow clone could not shrug off. 20 gone. 60. 104. Naruto made more. At 90 seconds, the West Arc buckled and Dracula went down on one knee with the skin of his forearms blackening and cracking, and Naruto shouted, Old man, let Gio. No, you're burning. I have burned before. Dracula's head came up, and he was laughing, and his eyes were streaming red down his face. I have burned before, and I have always burned alone, boy, so shut up and push. At 180 seconds, there were 900 Narutos on the deck, and 11 of them were the only thing between the north conduit and a total containment failure. And Naruto felt the last of the residential decks go clear in his ear. That's everyone. That's 612, that's every name on the list. And he laughed out loud in the middle of the worst 2 minutes of his life. At 220 seconds, Bobo the werewolf, who nobody had told to do anything, dragged himself across the deck plating on 3 legs and jammed his shoulder into a plate that had started to yaw and held it. At 240 seconds, the light went out. The silence afterward was so total that Naruto could hear the ferns dripping 4 decks up. He lay flat on his back on the deck plating in the dark, with about 11 clones worth of memories crashing through his skull. and after a while a small green emergency light came on somewhere and he could see the sphere above him. 30 mirror plates, closed, dead, cooling with little pinging noises. Grandpa. Here, a rasp from somewhere to the left. I'm extremely unwell. You still got arms. Debatable. Naruto laughed, which hurt, and rolled his head over. Helena Krieg sat on the deck plating with her back against her own desk, hands in her lap staring up at the machine. You held it, she said. Yeah, for 4 minutes. Yeah, that isn't, she stopped. 612. Griffin, was it? Your invisible man. He was counting into my own public address system, do you know that? I heard him do the whole facility. I heard 140 people come off Deck 9 in 90 seconds. Her voice was doing something strange. It took my keepers 11 minutes to move that deck for a fire drill in March. Lady. Something moved in the dark. Naruto felt it before he heard it. A shape coming across the deck plating, low and three-legged and enormous, and the shape had its ears flat and its lips off its teeth, and it was going for Krieg. It got 2 meters. Naruto came off the floor with everything he had left and put himself between 8 feet of freed, ruined, remembering werewolf and a 145-year-old woman with a whistle in her pocket, and took the strike on both forearms and skidded 4 meters. Bobo, hey, hey. The wolf snapped at him and missed on purpose. I know, said Naruto. I know, man, I know. Let him, said Krieg behind him. She hadn't moved. You've no idea what I put in his skull. Let him. Nope. Why? 'Cause then he's a thing that killed someone. Naruto kept both hands up, palms out, eyes on the amber ones. You already made him into 11 things he didn't ask to be. He's not gonna be that one too. Bobo the werewolf stood there with his sides heaving. Then Wanda's voice came down the hole in the ceiling. 400 meters of shaft and a smashed elevator, and somebody had run it. Somebody had run all the way down, screaming a name that wasn't Bogdan, screaming the stupid pup name from Prague, and the wolf's head came around, and every plate and rivet and wire in him didn't matter at all. He was gone up the ladder before Naruto could move. Naruto sat down on the floor. His arms had stopped working properly. You saved my life, said Helena Krieg. I'm aware. I would like you to know that I find that unbearable. Yeah. Naruto tipped his head back against a strut and closed his eyes. Good, sit with it a while, you've got time. The conclave came at dusk. They came in the black carriages, 40 of them this time, up a mountain road choked with 600 bewildered monsters in emergency blankets, and one gift shop that had been converted into a triage station by an ogre chef with a first aid certificate from 1974. Meyer Crowley's got out of the first carriage without his cane. He'd lost the seat. You could see it on him, the specific lightness of a man who has just been relieved of 400 years of furniture. He stood in the gravel lot at the edge of the hole and looked at 600 people sitting on the mountainside in the last of the daylight, and his mouth worked. There are children, he said. 211 under 50, said Naruto. That's the number she gave me. She's inside. She's not going anywhere. She's got a list she wants to hand over, every family she ever contacted, every hunter who ever sold her a location, 1,411 names and where they came from. He shrugged. Figured you'd want it. Crowley's looked at him for a long moment. I lost the vote, he said. I heard. 41 to 19. I told them the concealment was dead and they voted to build a thicker one. His jaw set. Then I told them I was leaving to dig 600 of our people out of a hole in the ground, and 11 of them followed me out of the chamber, and by the time we reached the carriages, it was 30. He turned and looked at the line of black coaches unloading blankets and stretchers and lanterns. 30, he said. It's a start. Grandfather. Nadia came out of the crowd with Dennis on her hip. Dennis, who had refused for 4 hours to be put down by anyone, and who had a fresh burn blister on one hand from grabbing a hot conduit, and who considered this the greatest day of his life. Crowley's went very still. Your face, he said. It's sunburn. Nadia lifted her chin. I got 9.5 hours. The old man's hand came up. It hovered a moment and then his fingers touched her cheek very lightly, the way you'd touch something that had come back from the dead. 9.5 hours, said Meyer Crowley's. Yes, sir. That's, his voice failed. He tried again. Your father managed 6. And then the 4th seat of the blood conclave retired, put his arms around his granddaughter in a parking lot in front of 30 of his peers, and did not let go for some time. Dennis, squashed between them, said, "This is nice, but I would like to be put down now." They got home 3 days later, because 600 people is a logistics problem, and Frank turned out to be weirdly good at logistics. The hotel took 211 of them. The other 400 went to houses and hollows and old families across 9 countries, escorted by gray coats that had, at Crowley's order, been dyed a color nobody could agree on, but everyone agreed was not gray. The ballroom stayed broken for a while. Nobody wanted to fix it in a hurry. On the 4th night, in the tower room with the fire and the portrait, Dracula laid the scroll on the table. His hands were still wrapped. They'd stay wrapped for a month, Mavis said, and she'd been saying it in a tone that suggested she planned to bring it up at every family event for the next 2 centuries. "2 keys, Dracula said. "Yeah, you first." Naruto opened his thumb and pressed it to the strand of red hair. Nothing. Then Dracula, awkwardly, using a fang because his fingers wouldn't cooperate, opened his own wrist and touched it to the same knot. The hair came apart into red light and drifted upward and went out. The scroll unrolled by itself. There wasn't much on it. Half a page in that hard, slanted, furious handwriting, and Naruto's hands were shaking too badly to hold it. So Mavis took it, and Mavis got 2 lines in before she couldn't, and Johnny took it, and Johnny, who had never met any of these people, who had married into all of it, who had dug a tracking chip out of his own shoulder with a steak knife, read it out loud in a room full of monsters with his voice absolutely steady, because somebody had to. "To my father, if he's real. I don't remember your face. I remember a red roof and a cellar and a woman shoving me into a boat, and I remember that somebody used to sing to me in a language nobody here has ever heard of. That's it. That's everything. I've spent 20 years asking, and the answer is always that I came out of the sea. So this is stupid. I know it's stupid. I'm writing a letter to a maybe. Here's what you missed. I got tall. I'm the loudest person in this village, and I've made that everyone's problem. There's a boy here with yellow hair who is an absolute idiot, and I'm going to marry him. And when I do, I'm keeping my name, because it's the only thing I brought with me, and I'll fight anybody who tries to take it. There's a thing in my stomach that wants to eat the world. That's a long story. I'm handling it. I don't need saving. That's the point of the letter, I think. I've had a good life and nobody gave it to me, and if you're out there and you've been feeling bad, you can stop. But if you ever do come looking, and this is the part I can't stop writing even though it's embarrassing. I kept the locket. I kept it my whole life, and I sleep with it under the pillow like a baby, and there's a picture of a woman in it who looks like she's about to do something dumb, and some nights I take it out and I tell her about my day. I'm not lonely. I want that on the record. I have a village and a husband and a baby coming in the spring, and I am the least lonely person in the world. I just would have liked to know the song. Kushina Uzumaki. Nobody said anything for a long time. Then Dracula got up and went to the window and put his forehead against the cold glass and started to hum. It was not a good voice. It cracked in 3 places. It was in a language nobody in the room knew, an old up and down thing with a bounce in the middle that would have been perfect for a child on somebody's knee. And Naruto sat in the chair with his mother's handwriting in his lap and listened to the whole thing with his hands over his face. When it was over, Dennis, asleep on the rug, mostly mumbled, "That's the one you do for me." "Yes," said Dracula, "it's a good one." "Yes." They put up the new sign on a Thursday. It took 4 days of arguing. Johnny wanted something with a QR code. Griffin wanted to leave the old one because he'd finally gotten his hair cut in a way that photographed well against it, which nobody could interpret. Mavis wanted a committee and got one, and then dissolved it after 11 minutes because it was the worst thing that had ever happened to her. In the end, Naruto climbed up on the arch at 4 in the afternoon, in broad daylight, with Nadia on the scaffold below him passing up brackets and complaining, and they hung it themselves. Hotel Transylvania, everyone welcome. Nobody HIDES. Sun Terrace, East Wing, Ask AT Desk. The Sun Terrace had been Nadia's idea. It was 400 square meters of the east roof with proper shade sails and a railing and 11 umbrellas. And there was already a sign-up sheet for it that ran 3 pages, and every name on it was somebody who had spent their entire life being told what they could not survive. Ilinka, the second seat, had gone up first, blind and ancient, with a clone holding each elbow, and had sat in the light for 4 minutes and 40 seconds and then cried for an hour. Wanda ran a support group on Tuesdays for the sanctuary people. Bobo came to all of them and sat under the table. Krieg was in a room in Volterra with a door that locked and 30 of Crowley's people asking her questions 11 hours a day. And she was answering all of them, in enormous and pitiless detail. And Naruto had gone to see her exactly once and had not told anyone what they'd talked about. Kakashi's hawk had found the hotel somehow. Naruto still didn't know how, and had decided not to ask, carrying a scroll that said, "Are you alive?" and then, further down in smaller writing, "If there is family, stay a while. The village will keep." He'd written back, "There's family. There's a lot of family. Also, I can turn into a bat now. It's the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I look like a foot." That last part was true, and Mavis had recorded it. "Higher on your end," Nadia called up. "It's level. It is aggressively not level. It's got character. It's got a 4-degree list, and everyone who arrives here for the next 600 years is going to see it and think, 'Ah, the vampires can't hang a sign.'" Naruto dropped off the arch, landed beside her on the scaffold, and squinted up. It was, in fact, 4 degrees off. "Huh," he said. Below them in the courtyard, Dennis was teaching an 8-foot cyborg werewolf to throw a kunai and doing it badly, and Wayne was pretending not to hover, and Frank was crying about it. 2 of the witches had opened a cocktail bar on the Sun Terrace. Somebody was playing music with far too much bass. The gargoyles at the gate had a new script and hated it. And Dracula stood in the deep shade of the doorway with his bandaged hands behind his back, watching his grandson hang a crooked sign in the middle of the afternoon, and looking, for the first time in 126 years, like a man who had stopped counting exits. "Leave it," said Naruto. "Leave it." "Yeah." He put his hands behind his head and grinned into the sun. "Let him see it from the road. Let him know exactly who's home."